All right, it's live. Let's make sure everything is hunky-dory, as they say. Let's see, the automatic sharing to Twitter thing did not work, so I'll manually post the link. There we go. We'll just chill out, wait for some people to join. How are y'all doing, by the way? We got I'm an Astronaut who's in here. You are the first, buddy. We got OK who's in here. Hey, OK, it's good to see you, man. People of the Age, Outcast, Mark Schmidt, Darian, Droid Motions. Okay, everybody's starting to join. That's good. How are y'all doing, by the way? Oh, all right, let me switch. Actually, let me move this. How are y'all doing? Gaio has an interview in a bit. Dude, good luck on the interview. Here. Uh-oh. That would be Pumpkin with his toy. How's life treating you? Life's treating me pretty good. We just got some groceries, you know? Nothing feels better than having a fully stocked fridge. So you and Favin are working on the next Halo title, says Mark H. We're working on the next Halo title. I'd love to work on the next Halo title. Let's pause that because we're in the middle of live streaming. Okay. It is weekly reset for Halo Infinite, right? So let's check out what's changed and everything. Noah Snyder says Halo TV show awful. Not awful, but not good or great. I'm doing just fine, good sir. How about you? Sandbox discourse getting wild? Oh god. Yeah, let's... If you guys want to talk about that. Oh boy. I was watching a video of yours and suddenly YouTube took me in here. Hi. Hello. Hello there. I just finished Kenobi, by the way. That was really good. Watched Doctor Strange 2 last night. Movie was nuts. I have not seen the Multiverse of Madness yet. Is it good? Oh, it's a gray visor. Okay, all right. That's fair. Land grab, get assists, kill enemy Spartans with the heat wave and PvP. Kill enemy Spartans with the assault rifle. Okay, this is relatively easy stuff to do. All right. Whew. Land grab. Halo TV show questionable. Yeah, questionable's good. How do you like those higher grocery prices lately? I don't like them. Thank you for asking. Bruh, I was watching the evolution of the grunts as I'm an astronaut. It's a pretty good video. It's good but feels short, says People of the Age. I agree there. I mean, to be fair, though, I guess if it was longer, it could get unintentionally very silly. Like, for all intents and purposes, I was under the assumption that Obi-Wan just hid on Tatooine and stayed low, and that the children stayed low. So the fact that they went on this, like, planet-hopping adventure is maybe, like, a little bit silly, you know? Are you a fan of Titanfall 1 and 2? I am. Hi, Pumpkin. These guys' toy. Have I watched The Boys? I have not watched The Boys yet. But don't worry, that's on my list.
Please obtain multiple zones.
Let's get some kills with the assault rifle, which should not be too hard. And then let's run over here. Yes, the Stencil Shadow mod will be coming soon. I've been a bit lazy these last few weeks. The Stencil Shadow mod, okay, that's on my back burner, buddy. Not back burner, that's something I want to do in the immediate future. I just need to find the time to be able to get around to it. Lots of crazy stuff. Dude, a gray visor, holy moly, that's totally gonna make me grind. Lame challenges, says Brendan. I know, right? I'm really thankful that we have gray visors and $17 armors, and that apparently lag issues are not a priority. Because the studio that wanted to maintain a live service Halo title was woefully understaffed. Yeah, that's the latest news, right? That is... I am sure that it probably wasn't worded well, and that there's a little bit more to that story than what was said on the Halo subreddit, but yikes, that is not something to say to the community, to basically say out loud, like, yeah, lag issues in the competitive shooter, don't have the manpower to deal with that right now. Especially coming up on 9 months after launch. Favorite Xbox? OG Xbox 360, One X, Series X. My favorite, I think my heart still belongs to the Xbox 360, to be honest. Like, even though, like, all of these other Xbox consoles are obviously superior, something about the Xbox 360, man. The controller, the dashboard, the color palette. The Fusion Coil video made me very happy. It's one of the only items that get little to no attention in the community. Yeah, I'm glad you liked that. And I know, I understand that I did not comment on the plasma batteries, but that is because I have bigger plans for the plasma batteries. But I'm also feeling like in hindsight, it probably wasn't wise, because things like the power core, like the Forerunner power core, it's technically not a fusion coil in design. Like, the reason that the Forerunner fusion coil looks so different in Halo Infinite compared to the Halo 3 one or the Halo 2 one is because, well, those weren't fusion coils. The Forerunner fusion coil in Halo Infinite is a classicified Halo 5 fusion coil, where it's supposed to be like metallic coils wrapped around an energy tether. We have yet to see a modern power core, Forerunner power core, which I assume if they do bring it back, it'll look a bit like that Halo 2 one. So that's something that it wasn't until after I uploaded the video where I was like, damn it, that's a detail I missed. We must go back to 2007 to 2010. Technologically? Or in terms of scope and scale. In terms of, like, the scale of games at that time, I agree. Because games have only gotten, like... The production value has increased, but the scope of the game has decreased. Which is kind of frustrating. Where games look better than ever before, they have better animations than ever before, they're pushing technological bounds, but the actual contents of the package is so much less. Ugh. I am playing Halo with my dad the entire series, and I refuse to play campaign without him. Good man. Good man. Hey man, hope you're doing well. What is your opinion on Halo Infinite's campaign tone? Do you feel like its tonal direction lacks the subtlety of past Halo games? Will that change with Joe Staten? I guess depends on what you mean by subtlety. Because I think something that actually helped a lot with Bungie is there wasn't a lot of subtlety. Their campaigns were usually incredibly honest. A lot of, like, the themes, you could say, are kind of... They're not explored too in-depth, but they are themes that are a part of the core narrative. Like, Halo Infinite... I guess let me try to figure out a way to put it. Halo Infinite is a very, very meta commentary on the Halo community and 343's tenure over the franchise. And I feel like it gets so meta and wrapped up in its analogies for things that the actual literal events of the campaign, like what is happening in universe, starts to get like weird because characters are being directed by the fact that they are analogies for things that are happening in the real. It's like an analysis of the Halo franchise. And so because of that, like the actual in-game events of the universe, they seem kind of like odd, I guess. I have a lot of opinions. I can go more in depth. I guess I'll just set the stage with that statement. Damn it. Okay. Did you see the new story event is on Waypoint? I'll be honest, I haven't been following that. Like, I'm sure it's cool, but like, I don't know, man. It definitely is cool. Like that choose your own adventure. That stuff is awesome for the community, but I guess it's like right now I'm just so soured on the state of Halo at the moment that I can't really get enthusiastic about it at the moment. I'll probably be way more energized about that kind of stuff once the game actually does something that isn't a weekly controversy. Andrew is here, who says, I'd love a mini evolution on the Covenant crates, radios, barriers, and other material. They're the one staple that isn't brought up that much. Example, the combat evolved radios. Yeah, dude, I freaking love, like, a lot of that, like, ambient stuff, where it's like you just go up to a thing and it's playing, like, an iconic stock sound effect from some old game library, and you're like, I know that sound. I don't know where, but I know that sound, and it's just like it tingles the nostalgia centers of your brain. Did not quite catch the analogies. Could you elaborate? Yeah. So, basically, Cortana is... Cortana, the Guardians, the Created, like, all of that stuff, it's all an analogy for how 343 handled the Halo saga when they took over. And the kind of, like, assumption that I don't need Master Chief kind of being the Halo community. I don't need the Master Chief. I can do it on my own. I can do everything. Like, everything's gonna be amazing. Halo is gonna be awesome, like, under me. And then it's like the hubris and the rush to kind of do it on your own without the help of the fans led to complete franchise collapse with Halo 5's story. And then what you've got with Halo Infinite is the weapon serves as kind of like an analogy for Halo when it was just starting, like the combat evolved age, like the early years of the Halo IP, and how new it was, how naive, how fresh-faced and excited it was about like exploring this new universe that was just created, versus the like older, cynical Cortana that assumes she knows best and she can do it on her own. And Cortana's goodbye to the Master Chief and saying, like, you need to be friends with the weapon here, like, you know, I can't help you anymore, like, I was wrong, my vision was wrong, but there is a chance at a fresh start with the weapon here, the weapon being kind of like this spiritual return to how Halo used to be in its youth. That's kind of like some of the stuff going on. That only scratches the surface of some of the commentary, but it's like, it's pretty cool. But it does mean Halo gets kind of like, Halo Infinite's story gets like just a little bit silly.
3 zones incoming.
Somebody said it's hard to hear me. Here, I can turn up the volume. We need space rhinos. Space rhinos would be pretty cool. As well as fish and fireflies and more birds, butterflies. Throwback to the Forerunners thing for content creators and how they were all excited and proud of the foundation and framework just to see wallpaper instead of actual walls and content. Yeah, it's... I guess it is disappointing, you know. Game development is kind of weird because it's like... the veil is lifted a little bit. And you can kind of like, you can see the potential and you can see the intention, but sometimes the intention doesn't always translate into the live game. Wait, I don't think I have to play land grab, do I? No, I don't. Okay, we can hop on over then to something like Fiesta. I like the emotional part of Infinite Story, but in terms of events, the story doesn't really go anywhere. The story does go places, though, I'd say. Because the story, it's... So here's the thing, like, about a story. A story doesn't necessarily need to always advance the universe forward. Usually when it comes to, like, storytelling, you always have certain beats within the story where nothing really happens in terms of the overarching plot moving forward. Instead, it focuses on characters and building up and establishing motivation, and then that sets up the next story where the universe goes forward and you are aware of where the characters all stand. Think of kind of like the original Star Wars trilogy, how you had the first Star Wars movie, which was very surface level but action focused and did a great job at introducing us to the universe. Then you had Empire Strikes Back, where the overall plot didn't really move forward. What happened was a lot of exploration of the characters of that first movie and where they stand within the greater universe and having them be challenged. Then you've got the finale where the actual state of the universe moves forward. The audiences understand what the characters are fighting for because of that previous movie. LNG, would you get mad if someone made a channel called Early Morning Gaming? I think I already have a channel called that, to be honest, that I need to upload on. It's almost like a meme at this point. So like Halo Wars? Yeah, kind of like Halo Wars. You know, where the plot of Halo Wars didn't really advance the Halo universe in any kind of way, but it presented like a lot of really fun characters. And that was kind of the strength of that game and its story. Damn it, okay. The story is really damn cool, but pulled a Breath of the Wild where it took place after the cool stuff. Sure that in maybe another half a year I can do co-op with my brother and friends. Well, I think that's definitely like a problem with the kind of IP that Halo is, at least. So for me, the best kind of Halo games are the ones where the galaxy is at war and there is large-scale conflict. So it's less of careful character studies, and it's more about, like, armies versus armies, I guess. Like, think of like, the story of Halo Reach. There wasn't an antagonist. It was armies. You know, you didn't have, like, you know, introducing the next game in the Halo franchise, Halo Reach, where the main antagonist is this elite general who is played by Hollywood voice actor here doing the vocal performance. Like, it was just the Covenant. They were the antagonists. And then you even think of the first game. Again, it was really just the Covenant. You didn't really get a proper faced antagonist until Guilty Spark later on. Oh boy. It seems weird that they had Forerunners, yet the game had these foundational issues. What's the point if you're not going to implement the feedback? Oh, for the Forerunner program? Well, it's... The Forerunner program, yeah, it's... We're not shown all of the game. It's more like we're presented with very key aspects that they're trying to get feedback on, and then we give the feedback, you know, and then it's like up to them whether they actually implement the feedback or not. And I can say that there were areas of the game where we gave feedback. At least I did. And it was like, this is my feedback. Like, don't do this, please. And they listened to that feedback, and I do think the final game is better for it, and it's stuff that you guys will never see, thankfully, because they listened to our feedback. But then there's other things where, you know, obviously things like, hey, like, there needs to be firefight or other such things, and it's like, would have liked if that feedback was listened to, but you know, or the almost like meme level, you know, you guys can't launch the game half finished again after Halo 5. Phil Swift says, at this point, I'm not mad, I'm worried. I want 343 to talk to us, be upfront about why things went wrong and what they're doing to try to fix it, etc. Definitely that. And also I want a bit of humility, I guess. Like, I don't want to hear COVID this, COVID that, you know, because there were plenty of games that were actively in development during COVID that came out just fine. Like, I would like a bit of humility. I'd like a bit of an analysis on what can improve going forward. What were the key issues during development? Was it organization? Was it structural? Was it kind of like an Anthem situation where you had like this half-finished engine that was under construction at the time that the game was being assembled, so people essentially had to like wait around for tools to get finished? You know, I don't want a lot of, like, throwing COVID under the bus, or... I'd like some more, like, I guess, honest reasons for why the game kind of, like, fell short. And that's not to say that we're looking for, like, this crazy controversial story, because sometimes, like, a rough game launch isn't the result of this crazy, like, documentary level drama, you know, where it's like last minute rewrites and crazy, like, power struggles behind the scenes. Sometimes it is like simple, honest mistakes of over-scoping the budget, overestimating what the tools are capable of, you know, or like not being able to meet timelines that were set that were not able to be met for a variety of reasons, like stuff like that. Wanted to see how you're doing after you said that you were upset. Have an idea on what, but are using your tweets to say YouTubers equal more community toxicity. This is Christian. Oh, I'm sure they're free to do that. Yesterday was a bit of clown world, or I guess the last couple of days. So I'll take it. You know, I'll take it. What button layout do you use? So on the Xbox, I'm currently goofing off with Halo 5's button layout, because I do need, for scoping, I do want it on the left trigger, because the game was designed for you to use the scope like that. But I'm still trying to find, like, that sweet spot, I guess, because, like, the equipment plays such a pivotal role in the gameplay loop, but... Okay, left bumper would be grenade then, because I can't use left trigger to throw my grenades. And right bumper is my melee. So it's like, I'm still trying to figure out a good combination. I'd ideally like basically bumper jumper back, but... Damn it. All right. I only play Halo for the campaign, so I really enjoyed Infinite, but 343 needs to be completely transparent because I want them to do good. What theme would you choose for Season 3 Fracture? It's a good question, actually. Season 3 Fracture. I don't want to go with Medieval Knight. That's almost like I'm trying to think of like time periods that they haven't done yet. Medieval Knight, no, like I don't want to do that because I'm very tired of like medieval knights. Why not do retro sci-fi? Not like Atomic Age, because that's like the Fallout series, and I'm very tired of that aesthetic, but I'm thinking of like, think the Jetsons, where it's like everything is super sleek, everyone's got like bubbles, you know, with like dorsal fins, ray guns, with like little fins on them, that are, you know, juicy poppy red, with lots of vinyl on everything, like that kind of aesthetic. But on the topic of playing Halo for the campaign, and 343 needs to be completely transparent, they need to be more transparent than they're currently being, because not a lot is happening outwardly, and we'd like to know what's going on behind the scenes. What about a fracture event where humans join the Covenant instead of the war, so Spartans in Covenant? That could be pretty cool, actually. What if it's an alternate reality where humanity are the Covenant, and it's the Covenant species that are trying to stop the firing of Halo? And so we've got, like, Spartans in, like, almost like a Spartan version of an elite. Could you imagine, like, the elite miner armor, but if it was designed to fit a human? In fact, not just the elite miner armor. Think of, like, all the iconic armors, I guess, throughout the Halo series for the elites. Hell, I'd like a silver timeline fracture event where we can get access to some of Silver Team's armor, divorced from the quality of the show, like, as well as a playable elite core. Rock those armadillo armored up elites. Wouldn't that just be Halo 5's art style? Oh, the like... No, not really. You mean you mean my idea of the humans joining the Covenant? No, I wouldn't say so. Warhammer Fractures event? Warhammer, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't have enough experience, I guess, like with Warhammer. I guess I'd like to explore, like, underexplored areas of science fiction. Helioscrill is basically elite armor on a Spartan, isn't it? Well, Helioscrill is, like, Halo 5's Arbiter armor designed, like, fused with a Spartan armor. Like, it's supposed to kind of evoke Halo 5's Arbiter. But what I'm talking about is take, like... Don't infuse Spartan armor with... I'm saying make elite Covenant armor built for a human body without any UNSC properties on it at all. Like, instead of doing a hybrid of two designs, straight up give the humans Covenant armor. Because that could be cool as, like, a core idea. No, I meant your description of the Jetson style. No, that's... The Jetson style, that's not really the Halo 5 art style. The Halo 5 art style is like a very... It's a very modern Western science fiction. Where it's... Somebody came up with, like, a good name for it, but I can't quite remember. It's like... Modern Western industrial something, like to describe, like, the UNSC, whereas the Forerunner stuff is almost like the Forerunner stuff evolved throughout the Reclaimer saga. In Halo 4, it was very, like, cathedral inspired, mixed with, like, some other things, but by Halo 5 it got almost techno-organic in a way. What about a fracture event that is Gundam? Dude, that could be cool. Like those super, like, blocky, boxy Gundam designs. That could be cool looking, actually. Oh my god, a parallel universe where humans are, like, 2 inches tall. And so Spartan armors are just giant mechs, but I guess by our standards, the mechs are just, like, normal sized. Damn it. What about the L you took on Twitter? Yeah, definitely took an L. Late night, please make an evolution of the Jackals. That's, believe it or not, on my bucket list currently. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fraction. I don't know if I'd like Halo to go that far, where you straight up got like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles running around. I'm already kind of like anxious about what Halo Infinite is going to look like in a few years. I do think Halo Infinite could use a little bit more creativity, a little bit more variety. I would like to see more Spartan armors put into the game. What happened on Twitter, Sasibi? Oh, just... I was being a clown. Don't use Twitter when you're in a bad mood. I was in a bad mood, made a tweet about the DMR leaks, because I was essentially like, okay, wait, the community seems dead set on the fact that the DMR is returning. Now, it's not a community problem. It's more of like, in my mind, I'm like, of all the guns to come back right now that the game needs, that's what I'm thinking about right now. What would make Halo more interesting? I'm thinking of like custom games. I'm thinking of expanding the actual like playability of the game. Another precision weapon? And I was like, well, why are they doing that? Can we instead get back the shell-loading shotgun? Can we get something like the plasma rifle so that the game can have an SMG of some kind? And then I was being a dickhead, and people were like, let's also have back the railgun. Let's also have back the saw. And I was like, no, those are boring. Let's have back more interesting guns. And then, sure enough, like, fights ensued, which, to be fair, I was being an asshole. Then people were assholes back, which made me even a bigger of an asshole, and then before you know it, I was being dunked on, rightfully so, because I was acting like a dick with my head up my ass. And then the next day, waking up and seeing like me being ratioed to hell and back, I was like, oh fuck. And so I issued an apology. So that's the drama you guys missed. Just in general, an anime event where the armor has more anime influences that isn't just cat ears. Yeah, something like that could be cool. Like, have a... I'm almost thinking, like, Microsoft loves not Japanese. That was me bringing something I was about to say forward, injecting it into the first sentence. Microsoft loves contracting, so why not contract Japanese artists that are known for producing, like, really incredible stuff? Fuck it, could you imagine, like, JoJo-inspired Spartan armor? Can you show your Eagle Strike armor? Yeah, I can. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot to show, you know? But here. Oh god, I think the main menu's bugged out. I don't think I'll be able to equip anything, but... This is my current Eagle armor. Eagle Strike, it looks exactly like everyone else's because there's so few unlocks. But... Oh, I can equip other things right now. Okay, good. It's not totally bugged. And that's my Rakshasa core. I'm not too happy with the color, though. I'm still, like, switching and alternating between different colors. I'm kind of drawn to this one. I don't mind the way this one looks, to be honest. The visor should be a little bit more interesting to look at, though. At least in my opinion. Okay. Yeah, that looks okay. We can run with it. Complete matches of land grab. Christ. Okay, here we go again. Land grab. Let's go. I want to see what a Transformers theme would look like. Also, it's okay to take L's every so often. It's important to learn and grow from them. Yeah, definitely. When you get handed L's, at least always, once things have cooled down and you're thinking a little bit more clear-headed and you're not immediately in the, like, I'm not wrong, it's the Halo community that's wrong, and you're going, like, completely insane. Like, once you've cooled down a little bit and you're able to actually think about what you've done, just take the L and try to learn from it. Phil Swift says, I worded my last donation weirdly. What I was trying to say is someone who actually considers the game good. Even I am dumbfounded at how bad they dropped the ball again. Yeah, that's it's very, very bizarre how badly they dropped the ball on Halo Infinite. See, I feel like even when you look at something like Halo 5, the props I can give Halo 5 is that the game did not launch in a good state. It was a very bad state that the game launched in, and very quickly, at least comparatively quickly, the game got back up on its feet. It took them roughly a year, I would argue, to get Halo 5 to be about 8/10 the game that Reach was, which it's still not up to Reach levels. You know, Halo 5, it's missing the big one, which is co-op play, local co-op play. It's missing things like proper firefight. But I would absolutely call Halo 5 a content-rich experience. Like, there's a lot of value for your money right now in Halo 5, whereas Halo Infinite, I'm not sure what's going on, why they're taking so long. From what I understand with Halo 5, the campaign team immediately jumped on to support the multiplayer team in building maps. Like, you had level designers actually constructing multiplayer maps, as well as, you know, artists and stuff. Like, it was kind of like the whole studio assisting before, you know, gradually everyone moved on to, like, different projects. And with Halo Infinite, that doesn't seem to be the case. I'm not sure what the campaign team is up to, but they're not currently working on the multiplayer like what happened with Halo 5, and that's very, I guess, confusing because, you know, the game needs help right now. Let me scroll up. Harvick says, what about a Gears of War Mass Effect fracture? That could be pretty cool. A Gears of War fracture, especially since, you know, Gears of War got Halo stuff. You crud on Halo 5 so much and then you call it content rich. I can crud on a game and still say that it's content rich, you know? Like, it's not one or the other. There's plenty of games that have, like, a ton of content in them that I don't think are, like, that good. Rookie says, just one infection and custom infection return. Yeah, as an infection guy myself, I'm like, please, can we have something? I just want to hit a guy with an energy sword and then have him be on my team also with an energy sword. Can we get a game mode like that, please? Also, is it known if Infinite will have a proper custom games browser like Halo 5? They did say that they're currently in the process of, like, charting one out. They're in, like, the pre-production phases, which I'm like, many months after launch and you guys are in pre-production for a server browser instead of that being kind of like a, you know, looking at its success in Halo 5 and being like, oh man, people like this thing. We should totally include it with the game. It's like, awesome. Cool, guys. I mean, I say that being snarky. It's work is being done, you know, like hard work. It's just annoying that that wasn't, I guess, a priority for the launch. The only 343 game, in my opinion, that was the most content complete at launch was actually Halo 4, the first game that was both a W and an L for a first try. Yeah, Halo 4, they had, if I remember right, Certain Affinity developed the multiplayer for it, whereas 343 worked on the campaign as well as the Forge, if I remember right. No, they outsourced Forge. It was a collaborative game, like a lot of games are, to be honest. Like things like the TAC map in the campaign, when you press, you know, the button and your little map comes up, that was developed by a completely different company. And don't get it confused, okay? That's not a bizarre, weird phenomenon in the game industry. You'd be surprised at how much of Halo 3 was also outsourced. You know, like, it's pretty common. With Infinite at 19th on Xbox's most played and Steam charts showing all Season 2 games gone, as more and more players stop playing, can we admit it's dying? Yeah, the player base is shrinking. The player base is shrinking. It's not stable. You know, you're going to keep losing players. More and more players are going to come and go. Unfortunately, you know. Let's see. It's all down to preference. I love Halo 4's campaign and Halo 5's look in custom games Forge. Halo 5's custom games in Forge, when all was said and done. You know, after, like, what was it, a year and a half when we finally got the server browser in there and everything, like, looking at Halo 5 as it sits right now, it is an excellent follow-up to Reach in terms of custom game potential. Like, that was very solid, and I'm very disappointed that they have the data internally. You know, they had a live team that was actively tracking and monitoring what the community was saying during the state of Halo 5's live service development. I'm very disappointed that that data was not factored into Halo Infinite's development, and they were just kind of like, no, the game will be fine. Lol, the stream thinks it's Black Ops 3. No, thankfully we're not playing Black Ops 3. Did desync ever get fixed? No, of course it didn't. The game hasn't changed much since its launch, to be honest. Kill enemy Spartans in Team Slayer PvP matches. Okay, alright. Halo is only dying because 343 keeps trying to kill it. Change it. Change is good, but this change isn't good. Well, is anything changing, though? I feel like not a lot is changing. What's changing is the business model. In fact, the only real innovation from Halo currently comes from the business model side of things, and that is always the most controversial aspect of it. You think of it, like with Halo 4, that was like the last game where it was like, you know, you bought it, you maybe bought the season pass, ugh, and then that was kind of it. With Halo 5, though, the business model changed. It's all about these buy the game, then buy more things in these little microtransactions, and you saw huge changes within the game due to that business model, and then you see it even more destructively with Halo Infinite, where, like, Halo 5, at least they had, like, you know, number. You play a couple matches and your number goes up. In Halo 5, they didn't even do that. The numbers are gone now. Now it literally is just business stuff. Buying money, buy the battle pass, buy microtransactions, buy the store, no unlocks, nothing in the campaign. Buy it. What's your favorite level from each campaign, says Phil Swift? I think I've answered this before. We've got the second level of the first game, Quarantine Zone from Halo 2, either the Covenant or Savo Highway from Halo 3, New Mombasa Streets from ODST, I can't remember the name of the mission from Halo Reach. The one that's kind of like Truth and Reconciliation, the start of it, the one that's at night. Although that one, I also like the other one where you, what is it called? Tip of the Spear? I think that's the one that I like in Reach. Halo 4, I really like Requiem. I like that mission quite a bit. Halo 5, I really like Swords of San Helios. I think that's a pretty damn solid mission. Halo Infinite, I like AA Gun Island. Or Pelican Down, I guess. I saw a post talking about Escharum versus Tartarus, and I'm saying Tartarus spanks Escharum. I don't know if I believe that. Based purely on the fact that, like, Eshram is so much older than Tartarus, and Eshram, I'd assume, has seen some shit. And that's not a knock against Tartarus, by the way. I think Tartarus is pretty damn awesome, but I guess, like, in terms of their experience, I feel like Eshram would be able to take down Tartarus. In fact, he'd probably school him about his flaws while taking him down. And by the way, I like Tartarus more as a character. I'm just thinking, you know, more in terms of, like, what we know about those characters. I hope everyone understands that outsourcing is not a bad thing. What is a bad thing is when you outsource, but there are still a lot of things not being completed. Cough, cough, infinite cough. Yeah. The issue is when, like, the outsourcing seems to be because the actual game itself is something that you can't seem to handle. Like, if it's about, like, Halo Infinite, the core game that we saw, it was outsourced to, like, how many different studios, and we see how little is actually here. Versus other games in the Halo franchise that also had outsourcing, and that outsourcing went to, like, other experiences within the game, you know? Like the multiplayer, the Forge, all of this stuff. You know? If Halo Infinite's core campaign was outside of 343's scope to the point that they need, like, outsourcing, they needed help to finish it, maybe it was a little bit too ambitious for one studio to take on. Tartarus fights Arbiter, Johnson, and 30 Elites. Like, I feel like Tartarus fights Arbiter, Johnson, and 30 Elites. Eshram has fought in so many wars that I feel like it would probably be hard to list, right? Like, Eshram seems like a guy with a body count that's in the hundreds, you know? Tartarus wouldn't be able to beat Eshram because he always shows up in holograms. Yeah, Tartarus would be sitting there waiting, and then the hologram would show up, and he's like, a brute. No, something better. And he just starts monologuing back and forth.
Gain the lead.
Why are you stealing EVR's ideas? I'm not stealing anybody's ideas. The Evolution series is something that I started back in late 2019. In fact, actually, EBR DM'd me and asked me if he could make his own. And I gave him my permission. I said, yeah, go ahead. The things that made Halo great are gone now, though. The novelty of the story, Xbox Live's popularity, etc. There's definitely a bit of that where the novelty of the Halo series is gone, but I don't think that necessarily needs to mean that the franchise is dead. You know, you look at things like Star Wars, you look at the way that The Mandalorian seemingly brought Star Wars back from the brink of death, you know. Stop making unnecessary YouTube wars, says Rebecca. Agreed. Agreed. Let's see. Eshram has presumably killed many Spartan 4s. Yeah, Eshram, he's a warlord. He trained Atriox himself. Now, granted, the way that Halo Infinite's story handled Eshram made him seem like a bit of a pushover, but I'm not going to be counting, you know, like, narrative shortcomings in a specific story. Because, you know, at that level, we could say that the Gravemind is a bit of a dumbass, too, because of the way that the Gravemind was able to be taken down in Halo 3.
Thrusters firing. Nominally.
What about Metroid-style armor? I can even see Nintendo teaming up to make a story where they find a Chozo temple on the Halo ring. That could be cool, but I doubt Nintendo would ever do something like that. I mean, I'd hope so, but... LNG, your comedy has improved in recent months. Huh, I wonder if that comedy, the improvement, happens to coincide with around the time that I met my fiance. Escharum didn't do a damn thing in Halo Infinite. Hey, that's not fair. He talked to Chief a lot through red holograms, and then asked his friend to kidnap the pilot, in which they proceeded to put him through a very PG-13 torture session.
Plasma grenades acquired.
And then when the Harbinger had a really good idea, which is, why not just send all of your forces onto the ring and take the Master Chief out? Escharum then said, no, an army wouldn't be enough. You know, the same Spartan that had to evacuate the planet Reach because an army was destroying it. Mickey says, old monkey solos young monkey by using anger and monologuing techniques. It's definitely true. Late Night Gaming, what happened to the whole Twitch thing? The Twitch thing is happening. In fact, I'm thinking tomorrow I'm probably going to stream Halo 2. You disrespect the chieftain of the Covenant, says Noah Burke. I don't disrespect the chieftain of the Covenant. Kill enemy Spartans with a melee tag. Okay, we're... Ay, ay, ay. Ex-chieftain, says CB. Yeah, ex-chieftain. One thing about Halo is the sense and element of betrayal. Do you know what I mean? It's not in terms of simply the relationship that characters have to the Master Chief. You mean about, like, plot twists and stuff? Is that what you mean? Still upset that the pilot showed no signs of physical harm after being backhanded by an elite. That's definitely the rated T for teen rating, you know? You can't really do torture to anything. I think of, like, in Halo 3 ODST, when that brute chieftain drops down and is just like, I've got, like, this giant and, like, dislocates one of their shoulders, and he's, like, coughing up blood, like his lungs are punctured. Or in Halo Reach, where they enter that farmhouse and they find, like, Marines on, like, meat hooks because elites tortured them for... You're not going to see anything like that ever again now that Halo is rated T for teen. The best you're going to get is a sadistic torturer bring in a human, and the most sadistic thing he can think of doing is backhanding him and then rigging him up to a machine where he goes, ah, but, you know, because all the pain is internal. There's nothing externally happening to him. It's kind of funny how 343 lets you kill a boss from the book in-game with... But it's kind of funny how 343 lets you kill a boss from a book in-game in Infinite. Meanwhile, 343 won't do a damn thing with the didact, says Isaiah. I'd assume that's probably because of how old and kind of like... Listen, the didact's cool, but he's very irrelevant to Halo's story by this point. Like... Could you imagine how confusing it would be for, like, the current generation of gamers if suddenly it was like, oh my god, the antagonist from 2012's Halo 4 on the Xbox 360, he's back! They'd be like, who? You know? It's kind of like that's the situation the didact is in going forward. It's not that they don't want to do anything with him. I assume it's just Halo has moved on from the didact. It's been a decade since he was relevant. And so to suddenly make him relevant and be like, like new gamers, you have to have played this game from a decade ago to understand what's going on. The stakes have never been higher. And I like the didact, okay? But that's what I assume the logic is. LNG, I hope you and Rebecca are doing good. Much love, brother. Rebecca and I are doing awesome. Rebecca and I are doing pretty awesome. We just finished Kenobi, which we liked quite a bit. I mean, I would agree about the torture, but here's my counterpoint. Spartan Griffin has bruises and cuts on his face when we get to him. The guy has a black eye. And his nose is bleeding a little bit. But outside of that, he's still rigged up to the PG-13 torture machine where he's just going, ah! And there's like energy restraints holding him. And all the pain is happening internally so that there's nothing physically happening to him. He's not being physically harmed in any other way that you can see. Whoa. The volume just suddenly got really high. For its time, Halo 4 was gorgeous. Nothing has ever matched seeing those Forerunner spires at the beginning of Requiem. Gave me goosebumps. Yeah, Halo 4 is like a really good example of kind of like working within constraints and limitations. Because in a lot of ways, Halo 4 is a downgrade from the Bungie titles. A lot of post-processing effects had to be removed or stripped down, the scale of environments, complexity of AI, and stuff like that. Halo 4 technically is a graphics downgrade, but artistically, you wouldn't know that because of how careful everything was in like how they presented the look of that game. It's a really pretty game. Realistically, how long will it take to get Infinite to a point where it feels complete? Oh, dude, I don't know. Here's where I currently am. So, Halo Infinite, let's start with the campaign. Co-op needs to be there. Scoring and timing modes need to be there. Mission replay needs to be there. Trying to think of some other things. Campaign theater needs to be there, but that obviously is like a crazy long shot. That's more of like a pipe dream at this point, you know? Some kind of content creation tool needs to be in the campaign. If not theater mode, it has to be something else, like a photo mode, or a free cam mode of some kind. And I'm sure there's some things that I just missed right there. As for the multiplayer, we gotta have all those classic modes back. All of them need to be back. The custom games needs to be working. There needs to be a file share system. There needs to be a lobby system so that we can look at other people's file share and download their favorite custom games that they've made. Oh boy. There we go. Trying to think of some other things. In terms of the UI experience, well, you know, there needs to be a progression system. There needs to be a career mode. There needs to be the ability to customize our emblems. There needs to be the ability to customize the colors of our emblems. There needs to be the ability to customize the color of our Spartans. There needs to be commendations, medals, achievements that we can get, milestones that'll take us months to complete, but things to strive for. It's just like it goes up, like just boot up Halo Reach on the Xbox 360. That's what the game needs in terms of content. And it needs that third mode of some kind, whether it be Warzone, whether it be Firefight, something. I feel like they were hoping Big Team Battle would be taken as the next third mode, but it's like, that's not what Big Team Battle is. Big Team Battle is... That's kind of why I don't like the separation between, like, Arena and other game... Because I'm like, there is no Arena. It's just Halo matchmaking. And the player count varies. You know? Some playlists, there's 8 players and no teams. Other playlists, it's like 8 players, but teams. Sometimes there's 16 players. And they're on 2 teams of 8. You know, there isn't this arena and then Big Team Battle. Like, it's just Halo matchmaking. So I don't like that Big Team Battle has been kind of, like, isolated because of this arbitrary, like, arena title. It's all there, you know, it's all Halo matchmaking. what's the third mode going to be? Because it's not big team battle. That's just part of the Halo matchmaking experience, you know? Last bit of money before my wallet disintegrates. One more question. Do you think Halo 4 would have done better if it released on the Xbox One? I think so. I think 343 needed more time with Halo 4. I remember talking to one of the guys who was around long enough at 343 to know some of the development stories of Halo 4, and he said that iconic moment where you come out of the cave and you see like the giant Forerunner monoliths coming to life in the distance. The original Inception was that the player would be able to take the Warthog and drive down that hill out to them and be able to like explore those environments in their grandeur, you know, the scale of the Forerunners coming back to life. But, you know, hardware restrictions, they basically just turn those into a very pretty looking skybox. Defeat. And I'm sure a lot of like the physics issues, a lot of the graphical downgrades from Reach, like a lot of that could have probably been rectified if they had a little bit more horsepower. Because all of the assets in Halo 4, like regardless of how you feel about the Reclaimer saga, 343 was kind of proactive with the way that they designed assets. So like the Elite, the Grunt, the Spartans and everything. The reason Halo 5 looks just like Halo 4 is because they started Halo 4's development with, all right, we're going to invest a ton of money into a series of designs, and they're going to be future-proofed. So we're essentially making this super ridiculously high-poly thing for CGI use as well as next generation, and we will just scale down those models if need be for like a game's performance. So they had kind of like, you know, put a lot of money into the Reclaimer saga, the look of it, because all of those assets were designed to be future-proofed. They were supposed to carry into the next generation of consoles and even beyond and just scale up. And so Halo 4, you know, a lot of those models, they're quite complex, I guess. Even if, you know, the optimization was a bit flimsy, you know, because you look at like those models in Halo 4 and they do look worse than Halo Reach. The textures, the materials, they're not quite as strong, but it's not because of a lack of trying, it's because they were deliberately downscaled so that they could run on the 360 hardware. Versus something like Reach, where it was just an asset designed to look pretty on 360 hardware. I judge a Halo game by its ability to make me stop shooting people and simply sit there and admire the environment. 4 Infinite ODST did that for me. Go up. That's definitely true. A big bit of what makes a fun Halo game are those eye-catching environments and stuff. Hang on, I am going to get batteries for the controller. Oof. Got them. Double A batteries. Come here. Come to Papa. The controller's hungry. Oof.
Slayer.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm like loading a shotgun. All right. Here we go. Sam says thoughts replying to Tartarus versus Atriox a bit. Atriox had the initial advantage versus skill, but Tartarus trash talks and goads him into clashing with brute strength. Oh, Atriox. We're moving on from Escharum, and now we're talking about Atriox. I feel like Atriox could single-handedly take on literally anybody, including Escharum. Like, so far, Atriox has been presented with some of the most iconic aspects of the Halo universe. He's confronted with some Spartans. And the first cutscene with them, he crushes them single-handedly and then picks up the helmet, which is this iconic thing in the Halo universe, you know, the look of a Spartan helmet, and just crushes it. Then he's confronted with the Flood. He's holding an infection form in his hand, and it's just like, oh, fuck this gross thing, and crushes it. You know, and then Master Chief, he meets the Master Chief and he beats his ass. So I feel like Atriox would be okay. The controller hungers for them sweet AA batteries. It definitely does. It's pretty nice, Microsoft, that you guys still make us use AA batteries. I will give this, you know, Sony, their controllers are usually hit or miss, but I at least appreciate that they offer rechargeable ones that aren't like a stupid amount of money. That being said, the PS4 controller is probably my favorite controller since the 360 controller. I wish that there was a way that I could use my PS4 controller on the Xbox. As heretical as that sounds, until Microsoft caves and releases a 360 controller mold for the Xbox One. Because I miss that controller so much.
Active camo. Inbound.
Halo 5 is also really pretty in my opinion. I'm still sad because the potential there was strong, but with the neutered story and the hyper lethal sandbox everywhere, it's still good, but weird. I think Halo 5 is selectively pretty. What's more frustrating about Halo 5 is it could have been so much prettier if they stuck with 720p as a base resolution. But then they were just kind of like bullied into upping the resolution to as close to 1080p as possible. So you got things like self-shadowing, boom, that's cut. You got some of the more complex shaders and shadow systems, those got cut. Volumetrics across the board were basically cut from the game. Like it, you know, when I look at like a Genesis, I feel like the planet Genesis just, it looks like mashed potatoes or like wax. It just looks so fake, and like I could easily see it looking a lot prettier once upon a time. You know, things like little screen effects like water droplets landing on your visor. I could even see like a rain system happening, but for the sake of performance, all of that has to get cut and downgraded until you end up with a game, you know, that kind of looks worse than Halo 4 in some areas. The Xbox One X upgrades for Halo 5 helped a lot, but it's, you know, I'm still, the first time I load up Halo 5, I can't not notice the fact that I don't cast a shadow. My gun is always lit up regardless of the direction I'm facing. You never have a shadow falling on the surface of your gun in that game, because that had to be cut for performance reasons. You know, but then you go over to Halo 4, and sure enough, Chief's shadow will fall off of the player avatar and even land across the gun, and it makes you feel more grounded in the world. The Halo 5 Sanghelios design was great. Halo 5 Sanghelios, I think, was the part of the... It's the only area of the game that I think genuinely looks really good. You know, and it's a combination of good art direction, good lighting, good colors, and everything. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Sanghelios... They had the most amount of time to work on Sanghelios out of all the levels in that game. Because then there's other areas like Genesis, where it's like, what is going on here? It looks like graphics settings were turned off. Halo 5 needs a Series X/S upgrade. Even on the One X upgrade, it downgraded stuff for... See, if somebody knows more, can you reach out to me? Because I've heard issues people say that the game has on the Xbox Series X. And I've even heard stuff like that. I'd be curious to know, because the One X, all I remember is that the game looked substantially better on the One X than it did on the base Xbox One console. So if people are, like, super detailed about Halo 5, they know almost everything about that game, and they can educate me on the differences between the versions for Halo 5. I'd love to hear. Grayson Film says, LNG, what's the best game? Like, a best game ever? I think that's subjective. But if you were to basically forced me to play one game for the rest of my life. I can't deviate. This is it now, forever and ever. It would probably have to be Minecraft. That would be the game that I'd be like, I'm content with playing this and nothing else.
Active camo. Inbound.
Pink Guy says Halo 5 was a good game, but not a good Halo. Infinite was a good Halo, but not a good game. Even the good Halo. Recently, I said that in my opinion, Halo Infinite is a 5 out of 10, even within the Halo franchise. And that's... Let me try to explain myself. So I'm divorcing myself from the actual quality of things like the campaign, the music, the art, and all of that stuff. Like, that's all fine, but Halo is a lot more than just those things. So for me, when I think of, like, Halo, I think of, like, Halo Reach, where it's so content-packed that you can play it for months before you start burning out, because there's just so much to do. Even if you went and picked up Halo 5 now, there's so much to do in that game. Halo Infinite, though? You can't even replay levels. Like, in terms of content, Halo 5 lacks even stuff Combat Evolved had. In terms of content, you know? So it's like... So for me, at least, as of right now, Halo Infinite is a 5 out of 10 game, and I'd love it to be higher than that, because Halo is higher than that, but, you know, I'm not playing a promise. I'm playing a piece of hardware that is in... software, sorry, that's in front of me right now. And what I'm playing is a lot less than previous Halo titles in the series. Granted, I'm having more fun with it than I did with Halo 5, but... It falls very, very short from the series' legacy, like what the series established for itself. Yeah, somebody said the term content continuity. And that's something 343 struggles quite a lot with. Their games have progressively regressed, ironically. You had Halo 4, which stripped away campaign theater. It stripped away campaign scoring and timing. Those were MCC inclusions, believe it or not. The base game of Halo 4 did not have scoring or timing for the campaign. You also had the removal of things like playable elites. You had the removal of firefight. You had the removal of invasion and all that stuff. But it was still, like, relatively content-rich. But it was a slight regression from Reach. Then you had Halo 5, which regressed even further in terms of content. You wouldn't believe it now, because Halo 5 is where it should have been. And then you have Halo Infinite, which is, to date, the shallowest Halo title in terms of content at launch. And it's like, it just makes me wonder, is like, oh my god, is the next Halo title, is the campaign gonna be part of Season 2 or something like that? Are we just gonna have Slayer only? Like, how much more can be taken away?
Overshield inbound. Obtain local zones to acquire points. Overshield.
Why is the weekly reward for Infinite a visor that costs $10? Why should I grind for it when I can't use it? Wait, hang on, what? The reward is a thing you have to pay money to use? What? Is that true?
Zones incoming.
Let's see. Halo 2 Anniversary campaign art style is where Infinite should have gone. Depends. There's some areas where Halo 2 Anniversary looks like awesome, but Infinite looks good. Infinite looks really good. I think the Forerunner stuff it nailed, you know, because even Halo 2 Anniversary has certain limitations it had to work within due to, you know, the timeline of its production. Like the Sentinels, they don't really look like Halo 2 Sentinels because they're using Halo 4 assets. Or, you know, the fusion coils. Those don't look like the Halo 2 fusion coils.
The math is advantageous.
Because they're reusing Halo 4 assets. So with Halo Infinite, you know, I explore those Forerunner environments and stuff, and a lot of this stuff is built from the ground up. Whereas Halo 2 Anniversary is a combination of new assets as well as clever reuse from previous titles. Ooh. If you don't have the Mark 5B armor core, then you can't. Okay, got it. Okay. So they're basically giving out a reward, a weekly reward that not everyone in the player base can use. So you can grind for it, earn it, but if you didn't buy that armor core, it's useless. Dude, this stupid fucking armor core system needs to go. Like, what a mess, you know? What a mess. This could have been so easily avoided. What impact do you think Modern Warfare 2 will have on Halo Infinite, including Tatanka? Honestly, I don't think much, because I think Halo Infinite currently, like, they're already solidifying what the future of Halo is gonna be. Like, timelines are being established. I don't think they're sitting here waiting for the release of Modern Warfare 2, you know, then to see what they can do next. They're making plans right now, and those plans will extend over the course of multiple years. They're gonna have to start development soon, if they haven't already. So I don't think Modern Warfare 2 is gonna have much of an impact on the future of Halo Infinite. If it does, that impact we won't see until, like, 2024, I'd say. Just because of the way that games are developed and how long it takes for content to get made.
Incoming.
Halo 2 Anniversary Elites are still my favorite designs. The Halo 2 Anniversary Elites, as time has gone on, there's little things that have annoyed me about them more and more. How they have, like, no ass, no hips, so they always look like really kind of like scrawny and kind of like just a dude who has a hunchback. Or the way that they kind of look like they have a baseball cap that's backwards because of the shape of their helmets and how kind of like it. I think of like the old Elite where it almost looks like a jet. You know, it like comes down here. But then in Halo 2 Anniversary, it's like a flat face, and then the helmet is up here and it goes back. So it just makes him look like a dude who has a baseball cap on backwards versus that like angry, aggressive-looking jet design from Halo 2 Classic. It's not bad, by the way. Those are just some of the issues I have, as well as like the weird hooves that they have, like horse hooves in Halo 2 Anniversary for some reason. They don't have toes, they have hooves. And it looks really weird because the Elites, they're not like, you know, clopping around when they run. And it also doesn't help that I don't think that they line up quite well with the old classic Halo 2 animation skeleton. So they're always like, their hands are frozen like this all the time. It's very weird looking. It looks like they've like sprained their hand. You know, and their mandibles, they just kind of like wiggle when they talk in gameplay, where in the classic graphics, they actually do move them and flex them. So it's just like subtle differences in the body where it makes it not quite line up with the classic animation rig. I'm not playing any more Team Slayer. I'm not playing... Oh my god, okay. Yeah, we can do that. Do you think we'll get flyable pelicans for Forge? I'd hope so, man. If not, let us script it ourselves, you know? The Elites are not hot enough for LNG. That's true. They're definitely not hot enough. You know, Arbiter. I really, really like the Halo Infinite elites, though. The Halo Infinite elites are just perfect. The body, the size of them, the animations and everything, all of that is perfect. I'm very happy with how 343 didn't just use the Halo 2 Anniversary elites. They actually built a new model and everything. Unpopular opinion, Magnum and DMR is better than the battle rifle. Sort of. The battle rifle has so much potential to be a fun gun. I think the closest that came to an interesting battle rifle was Halo 3, and that says something, because the Halo 3 battle rifle has a lot of problems, mostly the hit registration. But the idea of the battle rifle having projectiles, so you have to lead your shots versus just this boring hit scan, like, that's interesting, and I wish Halo explored that, but instead, they regressed. And, you know, now the battle rifle is this weapon that takes very, very little skill to use. With Halo Infinite, it has self-correcting recoil, so you don't even need to aim for the head. Just aim for the larger target, which is the chest, and the recoil will carry you up and give you a free headshot. So it's like the battle rifle of Halo Infinite is probably one of the easiest to use in the franchise. If it wasn't for the slow fire rate that was probably done to lock it to mid-range, which I'm like, hey, if a weapon takes a lot of skill to use, don't lock it to a certain range, just make it harder to use within certain ranges. Oh god. Am I the only person who actually likes the Combat Evolved Anniversary art style? Probably not. There's a lot of people who like it.
3 zones incoming.
What would you think about a 3-shot DMR with projectiles? That sounds interesting. A 3-shot DMR, 3-shot pistol with projectiles that you have to lead. That could be interesting. Or, you know, hell, 4 shots, because who knows if it'll be kind of like Combat Evolved, where it'll be a little bit too aggressive for a lot of folks. Just something like that, man, you know? I don't want to be able to be cross-mapped. That's how you end up with situations like the map Behemoth, where it feels so... It's such a great map until somebody gets a precision weapon. And then they're cross-mapping you, because it's all hit scan. It takes very little skill to actually shoot people at a range. It's like there's a very easy way to make weapons harder to use at a range. And it doesn't involve, like balancing and damaging and, like, having their fire rate to... Just give them projectiles. Mechanically now, it's a little bit harder to use them at range because not everyone is great at leading projectiles, you know? And the people who are good at leading their projectiles, like, it's impressive when you get killed by somebody who is able to do that because you understand how much effort it took. I think that's how you get things like the Halo 3 sniper rifle, where it's kind of cool being killed by that thing because of how much, you know, work goes into using it. Or the Combat Evolved sniper rifle, for that matter. Dude, if somebody no-scopes you with the Combat Evolved sniper rifle in close range, like, they've got such a small sliver to work with. And the fact that they are able to pull it off, they don't even have aim assist. It's like, just kudos, you earned that kill. Versus Halo Infinite, where it's like, we don't want people to use the sniper rifle at close range, so instead of making it hard to use at close range, we built in a mechanic to make it almost impossible to use, where it has bloom when hip firing, like this is Call of Duty or something. It's like there's more skillful ways to make it difficult to use, you know? I'm okay with projectiles in Halo if it's like Battlefield. Halo 3 projectiles kind of suck. They definitely did kind of suck. The netcode wasn't great. The hit dredge wasn't great. That's why I'm saying I feel like we're still... Halo could have the most interesting battle rifle in the series. It still hasn't had it yet, you know? I think Halo 3 tapped into an interesting idea, but the execution wasn't quite there because of the way that projectiles were handled under the hood, as well as the hit detection and stuff. The idea was great. Execution needed a lot of work. And it's kind of sad that instead of, you know, exploring that even further, they're just like, all right, Halo 4, we're going back to hit scan, and we're making it even more aggressive. Nico says they did it to nerf Mint Blitz. See, I feel like they shouldn't be nerfing Mint Blitz. I think the reason Mint Blitz was so popular is because the things he was doing were very hard to do. Mint Blitz is not... He's not everywhere, you know? He's a very rare thing in a Halo game, and when he is there, it's pretty damn cool. In Infinite, though, I feel like the things he pulls off are a little bit less cool because the weapons are so generous and easy to use. The Mangler and Skewer are a fun pair of projectile weapons. They are. It seems like 343 just gave up on the weapon kits. I really wanted that classic assault rifle shroud and pistol shroud. I haven't seen a new one in a while. This is the worst gamer. Yeah, it is kind of weird that we had like some barrels, and then that was it. Do you think that 343 releasing things like Co-op, Forge, etc. as a beta first rather than a complete piece does more harm for Infinite? More harm for Infinite. It depends, I guess, on what the beta is. Bloom is cringe, except on muskets. I agree. Bloom is a very lazy way to make a gun harder to use. Q Alter says, some dude threatened me because I embarrassed him with the plasma pistol in ranked, then apologized probably because he thought I would report him. That is embarrassing. But kudos for him apologizing, I guess. I miss fusion coil jumps. I miss them too.
Overshield inbound. Obtain local zones to acquire points. Overshield available.
3 zones incoming.
Good conversations, by the way, guys. These are all really good. If we get playable elites, it'll be locked behind a paywall. Dude, something I'm really hoping is that 343 kind of realizes that the business model was not good. It was not the correct one for the Halo franchise. And that going forward, they're going to kind of like move away from this ridiculously aggressive free-to-play model.
Suggestion. Fight harder.
I hope that, you know, by the time playable elites come, they're not going to be locked behind a paywall because the business model will be completely different from how it is now. I don't understand what Bloom is. I always thought Bloom was a visual smearing of lights. That's what Bloom is graphically. Bloom is kind of like shorthand in the Halo community for random weapon spread, which is just the more you fire your gun, the more random the bullet spread is. Which there are some arguments, and I think they're well-founded arguments, that are, well, how do you balance an automatic weapon at a range? Well, you give it Bloom. The recoil is completely random. The counter-argument to that is, so you're turning it into a slot machine, where sometimes you'll get a headshot, sometimes you weren't. So if two people are shooting at each other with the assault rifle and one guy wins the gunfight, was that skill? Or was that just RNG? Was it, you know, a lucky pull of the slot machine lever? That he was randomly gifted a free headshot. The argument for projectiles instead of Bloom in balancing weapons is that with projectiles, there is skill. You know, you need to be able to lead your shots, and hitting those shots at a range are pretty hard. Bloom is more or less a gameplay compromise because they want to keep the gun super easy to use. You know, they want you to be able to hit your assault rifle shots at a range, same with your battle rifle shots and everything. They don't want to make them more skillful to use because they want the game to be accessible. They want it to be easy. The problem is when every gun is super easy to use and you have a bunch of really skilled players, you know, it inadvertently does the opposite and makes the game even more sweaty than it used to be.
3 zones incoming.
What are your thoughts on how Infinite has no references to Osiris in Infinite multiplayer at all? No weapon charm, emblems, codings that reference them. It's kind of weird since Blue Team got a weapon charm. I'd say it's probably a mixture of Osiris not being important to the Halo franchise. And not that Osiris doesn't have their fans, but I guess let me put it this way. If you put Captain Keyes, Sergeant Johnson, Blue Team, Master Chief, the Prophets, Arbiter, all these characters, and Osiris, I'm willing to bet Osiris is going to be at the bottom of the list for people's favorite Halo characters, you know? It's more a matter of, like, what is more recognizable and kind of quintessentially Halo. I don't get wanting to play as an elite. Can you elaborate? Yeah, I can do that as well. So, off the bat, one of the cool things about playing as an elite is think about not multiplayer experience, but the content creator experience. So, back during the days of Halo Reach, the machinima scene in Halo was alive because Bungie allowed people to play as elite. So you could have fan films about the fall of Reach, or, you know, like fan films recreating events in Halo 3 using elites versus Spartans and stuff. Then you go into clans. So what's one of the best ways to, you know, garner and foster a community in a game? Give them tools to form communities. You've got your elite stands and your Spartan stands. You know, screw you, dinos, like Spartans for life. Like, screw you, humans. We're dumb dinosaurs. You've got clans forming within the Halo community. And during the days of Reach, elite clans and Spartan clans would actually war against each other in custom games. They'd build bases and have wars with each other. Now, all of that is very fun and silly, but you know what it does? It keeps people in the game. Then you can go over to multiplayer, where you got, well, it's just more ways for a player to express themselves. And then you've also got the potential for cool asymmetrical game types. Usually it's Spartan versus Spartan, like red versus blue, but now it can be Spartan versus Covenant. You know, UNSC versus Covenant. Like, that's a cool idea, right? For a game mode. Meat says, to be fair, machinimas aren't really being made anymore. And I'd argue it's one of those things where it's like, is it because they're not popular, or is it because around the time they started dying was the same time where 343 stopped including tools to make machinima? You know, Halo 5, they had to patch in the ability to lower your weapon. With Halo 4, weapons couldn't be lowered while you were moving, so all Spartans were, like, running around with their guns up. It made red versus blue really hard to film. They yoinked playable elites out of there, yoinked campaign theater out of there, made it a lot harder to create fan films and stuff. I do think it's one of those things where it's machinimas aren't made anymore, in part because 343 removed so many staple features that machinima creators relied on. Playable elites aren't worth the massive amount of work it would take to balance it, as cool as it is. I disagree entirely. I could not disagree any less, even if I tried, to be honest. It's not all about Slayer. It's not all about balancing. It's about the bigger game as a whole, the bigger variety of experiences. If you're thinking purely about how it can be balanced in 4v4 Slayer, then you're not thinking like a Halo player. You gotta think about the wider variety of things. You gotta think about the custom games, theater mode potential, customization potential, even new game modes. Does anyone else kind of cringe in Halo 5 when Covenant Slayer comes up and there's no Covenant, it's just a bunch of Spartans? I remember in Halo when Covenant Slayer was Covenant Slayer. It was a bunch of dinos running around with dino weapons. You know, or then you think of, what was that asymmetrical Warzone game mode? What was it called? Warzone Assault? It could have been a lot cooler if it was Spartans versus Covenant. Because it's asymmetrical, you know? How do you know who the enemy is? Well, are you an elite? Chances are it's those humans over there who are the enemies. And then you can even have interesting maps where you could have one half of the map be entirely Covenant or Banished themed, the other half like beach landing UNSC themed with like drop pods everywhere, crashed pelicans implying that the UNSC crashed into Banished fortifications, and a little skirmish got started. You know, Halo used to be more than just Spartan this, Spartan that. It used to be you bought Halo because of the Halo experience. And then for the people saying, you know, that like, well, what about balancing? Okay, just elites aren't in Social Slayer or Ranked, you know? They're in specific game modes. Like, problem solved. Ooh. What kind of forge tools are you hoping to be added the most? I'd love for the way to balance weapons ourselves. Like, could you imagine how cool it would be if you could, like, you could take the assault rifle or something and tweak the code of it, and you could have it basically be the SMG from Halo 2, or the assault rifle from Halo 5, or, God forbid, the assault rifle of Halo 3. Like, you could make it perform however you wanted because you could tweak the balancing yourself. You could even turn it into a single-shot precision weapon if you wanted. I miss taking down Scarabs. I miss taking down Scarabs, too. Scarabs were freaking awesome, man. Scarabs could have totally been, you know, the big thing that sold people on Halo campaigns, because it was the idea of a large sandbox set piece where you're kind of in this, like, simulated battle and you have to do a thing to conclude the battle. It's less of enter a room and kill all the bad guys, and it's more of enter the room and you've got this perpetual war going on between different factions and a giant artillery machine of some kind that you have to take down. And the artillery machine is moving. It's like actively part of the battle. And then, you know, after that, Halo unfortunately got more and more static. Like, could you imagine how cool in Halo Infinite, instead of, like, a static Banished base, it could be a patrol that is moving throughout the ring in a predictable pattern, and it's a Scarab with a fleet of ghosts and stuff like that. And once you get close enough to it, you have Marines join the fray, and then you've got, in the open world, this massive battle between UNSC forces, Banished forces, and this giant-ass Scarab stomping around. And you gotta bring down the Scarab. And only once you do that will Banished forces stop respawning. Oh, I think I missed. Afternoon, fella. Good to see you streaming, says Installation00. Hey, Installation00. It's good to see you too, man. How are you doing? Cerebral says the only FPS game that did Scarabs right was Halo 3. Well, it was also the only game that did Scarabs. Because, like, in terms of them being a element of the sandbox, because Halo 2, it was more or less a scripted building. It was a building that moved from one place to the other because it was scripted to. Halo 5, the Kraken, again, it was a building like Halo 2. You know, it wasn't an actual entity. The Kraken moved to a place. Then things spawned on the Kraken only once it stopped moving.
Suggestion.
And from what I understand, it's because Bungie broke something to... So, under the hood, the Scarab is considered what's called a biped. If you don't know what a biped is, that's essentially, like, what the game calls entities. So, like, a grunt, that's a biped. A Spartan or a Marine, that's a biped. Actually, I think a Spartan is a player. But you catch my drift. So the Scarab is also a biped. It's a giant creature. And Halo 3, there was this code so that physics could be localized to a larger biped. So, like, when you throw a grenade on a Scarab and it quickly turns, you won't have that grenade just go shooting off the side of the Scarab. Like, it'll feel like you're on a stable platform, you know? Same with, like, the way that other bipeds navigate the larger biped. And from what I understand, during the development of Reach, Bungie broke that code, or that code got lost, or it got changed in some way. So going forward, they couldn't utilize Scarab battles anymore. That's why they show up in Reach, but you can't actually fight them. And then, you know, going into Halo 4, the Lich was the same way, where you notice the Lich, it's like a building. It's scripted to move to a place, it stops, then enemies spawn on top of it, because the code for enemies to be able to navigate this thing that's moving, you know, it's not working. At least the music composers on Infinite did a phenomenal job. Everybody did a phenomenal job. Like, everybody. I don't ever want to knock, like, the actual, like, developers, you know, the guys who designed all of these assets. Like, that's a pretty damn good-looking XP challenge, stupid challenge swap thing. It's a great-looking model. That's a cool-looking skull, all of this stuff. Even the UI, as messy, sloppy, and dysfunctional as it is, I'm sure it was an ass to get working, you know? And I'm sure a lot of hard work went into it, even if, like, the full vision couldn't be achieved. Everyone did a lot of good work. It's a pity that the planning was so poor that this was what all that hard work led to, you know?
Land grab.
Triton says, thoughts on the Coalition's run on Gears compared to 343 and Halo? As a primarily campaign guy, I think Gears is doing great. Gears 4 and 5 are my second and most favorite Gears games, respectively. I think the Coalition is doing a pretty good job with Gears. Obviously, there are gear heads probably watching who have, you know, deeper thoughts than mine, but just on a surface level, you probably wouldn't even notice that there was a change of developers in the entire series unless you were told.
3 zones incoming.
Just because it's mostly all stayed consistent. Even kind of like the trajectory of the different games. Like Gears of War 3 is where it started to get a little bit more colorful, a little bit more focused on natural fauna, flora, and stuff. Started to get a little bit more character focused, and Gears of War 4 only further expanded that. And then Gears of War 5 Gears of War 5 did some experimental things, some things I don't think worked very well, like the open world stuff, but it all still feels very consistent. Even the Gears universe, it feels still like that same universe.
We have encountered a zone deficit.
Oh, I missed a
3
thing.
zones incoming.
What would you want in the campaign DLC? In the campaign DLC, man. What I'd probably like, to be honest, is I'd like something that's not open world. Not that I'd be opposed to something open world, but I'd like something that's a little bit more linear. And that's also not to say, like, I want, you know, everything to be inside. I want just kind of like... Have you ever heard the term outdoorador? It's... You're outside, but it is linear like a corridor. So you think of the second level of Halo Combat Evolved. You're outside, right? Well, it's still a hallway. It's still a corridor. It's just a huge one, and you're outside. So it's an outdoorador. I'd like stuff like that, you know, a little bit more direction, a little bit more carefully crafted encounters with UNSC Marines, because I think the biggest aspect of Halo Infinite that's kind of lost is the simulational aspect of Halo. You know, where you've got these giant simulated battles of Marines versus Banished, wherein Halo Infinite feels almost more like Far Cry, you know, where nothing exists beyond a few hundred meters of the player. And that's the same in the Bungie games as well, don't get me wrong, and even the 343 games, but it's you're better at crafting the illusion of there being a big war when you're linearly directing the player. Half-Life is that outdoorador. Yeah, basically, Half-Life. Doc Hunter says basically any Call of Duty game. No, I'm talking about Halo. Linear does not equal Call of Duty. Linear can be bad, but linear is not bad. There's a difference between linear and restrictive, I think. Call of Duty campaigns have gotten restrictive, where Halo games were linear. Smith Jack says, nope, Gears head here. Gears 4 and 5 robbed Gears of its soul. I'd be curious as to why you think that. Because at least for me, I feel like Gears of War 4 was kind of like an interesting expansion on the idea that the planet Sarah is kind of like... Sarah is probably gonna be destroyed. Like the Sarens and everything, like all life on that planet is eventually gonna go extinct. Like... It's moving there slowly, but just life can't live on that planet. That planet was almost conceived in war. And so I like the way that Gears of War 4 starts with the butterfly analogy, where it's just like things change, things crystallize, and then something worse comes out. And it's kind of like, you know, you defeated the locusts, and something worse is here now. You know, like, Sarah just can't catch a fucking break, that poor planet. And even, it's kind of, like, interesting that, most of Gears of War 4's campaign takes place in the ruins of past Saren civilizations, like these ancient castles from wars past. It's just, like, you get the vibe that it's just like, dude, Sarah's doomed. Like, just give up on the planet. I hope in future DLC, Marines have tiny roles, like how the Halo 3 Marines would talk to the player directly and give them important information at some points. They felt important. It's that, what I said before, the simulation aspect of Halo that's really kind of unfortunately suffered under 343. They don't seem to really value the simulational aspects of Halo because they're so focused on the player. Like, I'd argue Halo was never about being a Spartan experience. It was always a simulated battle between armies, and you were a super awesome badass. And so you were the most powerful piece in that simulated battle. It was never this thing about, like, this is a game about you being a Spartan. Halo was always pitched as, like, awesome battles, huge conflicts, these interesting alien armies, the UNSC, tanks, vehicles everywhere, huge scale warfare. And you're at the center of it. It's never been about, you know, like, the UNSC, they're all gone, nobody's here. It's Spartans. Okay. No, I'm not gonna do... Not gonna do that here. Let's go into Fiesta for a little bit. Imagine ODST that, like, Carmine from Gears of War 3 and 5, and ODST is hellbound on the death of the Banished because his brothers were killed by them. Stuff like that could be cool. Like, I think 343, they've got to start naming their different... Like, I want 343 to take a bunch of Marine models, make a series of Marine models. Each one has its own voice actor, a name, and then kind of release them into the game and scatter them around the game. Because I think that's definitely, like... They got to be a little bit more personable. Halo Infinite is 343's best implementation of the Marines so far because their dialogue is, like, fun. You know, they feel like Halo Marines. But they're missing a bit of that personality because it feels kind of like, you know, randomly generated. Like, you know, face swapped, skin tone changed, hair piece swapped out, like voice lines inserted, like they lack a bit of that like humanity to them, but they're getting there. They're on the right track. What they definitely missed out on, though, was making the Marines more or less a mechanic, more than like, you know, a simulated entity within the game world. I think of how those Marines that are captured, like, you could go into a Banished base, free the Marines, leave the Banished base, come back, the Marines are captured again. Like, they're there again. The reason is because they're a mechanic. You know, they're essentially a tiger that's tied up in a Far Cry game, you know, where it's like, that's not really a living animal that's tied up. That's just a boring Ubisoft sandbox mechanic. Earlier, you were talking about the didact. If the Harbinger turned out to be the didact, that would have been a great way to bring back the character. Well, I think, isn't the didact like he's an AI right now? He's been composed, right? In my opinion, an awesome way to bring back the didact. So here's my pitch, okay? It's never going to happen because I'm pitching it. And game companies cannot take advice from fans when it comes to narrative stuff because there are legal issues with that. So it's never going to happen. Here's my pitch, though, on how Halo can bring back the didact. So, remember the story of Mendicant Bias, a Forerunner AI that had noble intentions, started out well, and then was corrupted by the Gravemind and became, like, a twisted, like, shadow of his former self and brought about the downfall of the Forerunners and kind of, like, failed all his people and his creators. And Halo 3 was basically his atonement. Halo 3, when you get to the Ark, those terminals that you find, they are messages from Mendicant Bias to Master Chief. And they're basically him confessing his sins. It's probably also intentional that those terminals look like a confession booth. And over the course of Halo 3's campaign, Mendicant Bias unloads, you know, his heart onto Chief and confesses his sins to him. Shows him logs of conversations and stuff, shows him, you know, the final days of the Forerunners, what they did. And then the last thing he does before dying, as the Ark, you know, fires, or the Halo fires and destroys the Ark, is he's like, I'm going to hold the Halo ring together while you do that awesome Warthog run. This is how I'm going to die, but I'm going to die in atonement. It probably won't wash me free of all the sins that I've committed, but at least I'll die feeling sorry, basically. And that's how Mendicant Bias dies. So, wouldn't it be pretty fucking badass if in a future Halo game you found Forerunner terminals and it was a digitized didact confessing to the Chief? And they're little things, like maybe you interact with the terminal, you get thoughts from the didact. They're really scattered because he's composed and he's now an AI, so he's talking to you through binary and all these weird glitchy things, showing you disconnected visuals of his life and unloading all this information on you. And as a little thing, when you interact with those terminals, subtle things about the level change if you're in a Forerunner environment because he's assisting you. You know, maybe Sentinels activate, maybe Promethean armigers come to life, but their eyes switch to blue, or they switch to green, and they become friendly. You know, and you could even have, like, what's going on? Why are they fighting for us? Never address it, but the player knows why they're friendly. And by the end of the game, you have the didact die to save the Master Chief or alter the level in some kind of way as a form of atonement. Because I think the didact, he's never going to be forgiven for the things he did. I think that's very dumb. Like, the didact's a war criminal for all intents and purposes. Like, you can't come back from that. You know, it's like Darth Vader. You can't make Darth Vader friendly, happy again. He's going to have to die for the things that he did. It would be a cool mirror, a parallel with what happened to Mendicant Bias. To essentially have the didact acting as an AI in atonement for the sins he committed while he was alive. Halo Infinite is too positive. When you rescue Marines, they're like, thanks, Chief, thank you for the power and hope, instead of Halo 3 when they're like, they captured our squad, killed my men. There's definitely some of that, but I think a bigger concern that I have for Halo Infinite's Marines is that they're... Like, think about in Halo Combat Evolved, when you kill all the Marines, that Cortana line, they're all dead. There's nobody left. And then in Halo Infinite, you can't kill Marines. They're immune to your fire. And if you can kill them via exploits or running them over, it's still like, good job, Chief. Those Marines owe you their lives. Like, nothing happened. The game is just completely unresponsive to, like, what's happening in the game world around it. There we go. I needed to get that. Yeah, but that's my pitch for the Didact coming back. I don't think the Didact should ever become the big bad of Halo again. I also don't think he should be redeemed and became a friendly character, because that would be like if Darth Vader got redeemed and stayed alive and had that comical white armor. Because I feel like even the fight for the mantle of responsibility is kind of over, you know? Like, that I feel like by this point we should get that the mantle is done and bad. Like, it led to a second galactic collapse. You know, first it was the Forerunners versus the Flood. Then it was humans versus themselves, their own AI systems, and the Banished thrown into the mix, and just, you know, a second societal galactic collapse because of this stupid mantle idea that has done nothing but cause pain to the people of the Milky Way. I feel like it's about time that Halo starts to move on from the idea of, like, but what about the mantle? It's like, fuck the mantle, dude. Fuck the librarian. She's got it all wrong. The mantle sucked. Nobody should ever have that kind of power. And I feel like the Halo galaxy's decades and decades of blood, violence, and betrayal is evidence enough that the mantle is a very inherently bad idea. Flying Bowser says, hey, Late Night, do you think we will ever see another rated M Halo at some point? I mean, if people ask for it. I'm not entirely sure what 343 wants to do with the Halo IP right now, because as far as the games are concerned, they're trying to aim at a young audience, and some of that is because they're trying to capture a younger audience, but also, from what I understand, some of it is due to localization. A rated T game is a lot easier to localize than a rated M game, where you have to worry about censorship, how hard it is to sell in certain countries, what you need to cut, tweak, change. You know, you look at the Chinese version of the MCC, and you see all the weird tweaks and changes to those games to fit within the, you know, the demands, versus just flat out start the game in a very safe place, development-wise. And then it's a lot easier to localize. But then you look at something like the Halo show, where, like, people are having sex, people are smoking cigars in, like, tubs naked, and people are being blown up, and their guts are all over each other, and then they go have sex with Covenant prisoners while having blood all over the... And it's like, what do you... But then the game's rated T, and it's aimed at a young audience, and then you've got, like, young adult novels, and it's like, what is going on with the Halo... Who's it aimed at right now? I'm very confused at who the target demographic for Halo is at the moment. Win any PvP matches. Okay. An HMG. HMG. Oh, the turret. God, I wish they'd just call it the turret. I'm so sick of learning the fictional fake names for these guns. I just want Red Reticle on PC. That's the biggest thing for me, LOL. And Firefighter Spartan Ops. Firefight for me and the Red Reticle for sure. Ooh. In fact, wouldn't it be cool... Sorry to go back to the Didact for a second. Wouldn't it be cool if it was the Didact in his atonement as a digital AI in these hypothetical terminals? If it was him who came to the realization that the That the mantle of responsibility is actually this bad, poopy, stinky idea that nobody should be pursuing, that it is responsible for all the hardships. You know, the Forerunners didn't die because of the flood or because of, humanity. They died because of their own hubris. You know, this stupid idea of the mantle of responsibility, which is just like opening the door for a authoritarian dictatorship on a galactic scale.
Capture the flag.
Do you think 343 will ever balance aim assist and give a chance for mouse and keyboard players to be competitive? It would require them, in my opinion, reversing what they've done to how aim assist works in Halo Infinite. They've changed it quite a bit from how it used to work, and I'm not the biggest fan. The Didact versus Atriox. Okay, that's a pretty good comparison. I think the Didact would absolutely wipe the floor with Atriox. Atriox would be there like, I am Atriox. What the fuck? Let me go. And he'd just like hover him over a pool of lava and drop him in, I'm just like, dude, the Didact can like lift objects with his mind. Like, what's Atriox gonna do? Hit him with his hammer? Infinite doesn't have aim assist. It does have aim assist. When do you think we'll hear about Forge news? Hopefully in the next month or so.
Enemy returns their flag. The enemy has your flag.
What is your opinion on the Kerberos helmet? I personally... What is that helmet? There's so many helmets in Halo. Like, dude, I don't even know half the name of the Halo 3 helmets. I know just that's the one that looks like Marathon. That's the ODST helmet. I like that one. That's the Chief helmet. That's the Chief but from Combat Evolved helmet. Like, tell me, which one is it that you're talking about? What other game genres would you like to see Halo attempt? I'd like to see Halo attempt... So, people were talking about Forerunner Flood War game. I don't think we need one on a AAA scale, not because it wouldn't be cool, but more so because I feel like that would be a hard sell to people. People buy Halo because it's the game where you get the gun with the numbers on it and you shoot the little guys called grunts. If they load up a game called Halo and it's like, what the hell? Why am I playing as like Voldemort and I've got like laser guns and there's like what is this? What would be super dope though is a Forerunner Flood War balloon tower defense game. And the reason why is because the balloon tower defense horde mode in Halo Wars 2 with the Flood, like that what was it called? Terminus Firefight, that thing was fucking awesome. And it's like, that would be so cool if you could have this top-down balloon tower defense type thing where it is an RTS game that is purely defensive in nature. It's all about you fighting off waves of flood, and at the same time you've got like cities that you're trying to maintain, galactic politics that you're trying to keep, under control, and the main gameplay loop is kind of like a balloon tower defense type thing where you're trying to keep the flood advancement into the galaxy at bay. What is it like having such an audience? It's pretty awesome, to be honest.
An ally captured the flag.
It's pretty honest and very, it makes me very grateful to have an audience. Because it also helps with, like, sometimes you just want to geek out about Halo, and it's like, boom, I have a ton of friends who want to geek out about Halo 2. Do you think the Grappleshot should be altered or removed for future campaigns? I love the concept, and it's a blast to use, but it really limits what you can do in the campaign. More so than what you can do, because it very much removes limits on what you can do, which is kind of a problem for level designers. You know, it's very hard to make a variety of gameplay scenarios where at any point the player can do whatever they want, regardless of if it's what you want them to do. You know, you don't really have a lot of room for a variety of situations when the player, if they want, they could just attack it the same way each time, which is grapple hook to the thing. What I would love, though, is if the equipment functioned like it did in multiplayer, and it became a neutral thing that the Banished could use, too. I pitched the idea before of, wouldn't it be cool if the way that you resupplied, you had, like, Banished supply lines in the open world? So, like, okay, you want grapple. Let's say the grappling hook in the campaign has 15 charges before it's out. Well, the way that you do it, the way that you get more of it is the grapple hook, instead of being, like, a UNSC thing, you know, instead of being Spartan equipment, the grapple hooks are banished in nature, and they come from banished mining ores on the surface of the ring, like mining, you know, Forerunner metals and alloys, like smelt down and stuff. So they use it to kind of like rappel down cliff sides and, you know, drill into the cliff sides and stuff. So you scour the open world for banished mining crews. And you know, you can see like a grunt mule carrying a bunch of mining equipment, maybe even some Forerunner weapons and stuff like that. And that's how you get more equipment. And then I'm trying to think of, like, the threat sensor. Maybe the threat sensor, trying to think. Where would the threat sensor be in the open world? It's a UNSC piece of technology because it interfaces with your HUD directly. So what if it's found in scrapyards? Like, you could find it in banished locations near, like, scrapped vehicles and stuff like that. Or, most commonly, it could probably be found by crashed pelicans and stuff. You have to go into the pelican and rip it out and, you know, like attach it to your gauntlet and stuff. Like, I feel like it would be a lot more fun if these pieces of equipment, instead of being, like, Spartan equipment designed for a Spartan to use, if it was more or less the chief improvising on the field. You know, the grappling hook, have it be just like a random thing that he's... In fact, one of the first things I thought is, okay, how'd the pilot get Chief into his pelican? He probably used a tether of some kind, right? I was assuming that the grappling hook was going to be just Chief, like, what the... like, ripping it off and then attaching it to his arm, like whatever the pilot used to, you know, get Chief into the pelican. So it was kind of boring to see. It was like, oh, it's Spartan equipment. It's a Spartan grappling hook for Spartans to use. I thought a lot of equipment was going to be improvisational. What is happening?
32 feet per second. Square.
Oh, no. What are your thoughts on the vehicle combat in the Infinite campaign? It's not great, is it? There's nothing more unsatisfying than seeing a Banshee shooting at it with it having like very little visual response to the damage you're inflicting. Hearing the pilot for some reason clear as day going like, the demon is down there, like he's not inside of something, you know? I feel like the most important thing should be the... you know, the aerial sound of the Banshee, like how ominous that would be, versus just like, like hearing the pilot yelling and babbling above you. And then you shoot it, and then just suddenly it starts glowing like a cartoon, and then like, and the pilot just ejects and falls to his death. It's so much less satisfying than the, you know, the classic games of just like blowing them out of the sky and having them come crashing down to the earth. It sucks when the pilot of the vehicle always survives because they know to eject because their vehicle is glowing like a cartoon. Custom vehicles? I'd love custom vehicles, man. I'd love to be able to, like, change the look of the Warthog and stuff. Like, what I would love to do is I'd like to take the Halo Reach, like, the front of it. I'd like to attach the Halo 4 cage to it. I'd like to attach the Halo 3 chain gun, you know, the Gatling gun with the rotating barrel. I'd like to attach that to it and stuff. And then I'd like to, I don't know, maybe mess around with removing or adding those red water canisters on the back. See what looks cool.
Enemy returns their flag.
The vehicle combat in Infinite is also very weak. It's also just, like, weak in general. Something also, if we're talking about, like, those simulation aspects, something 343 seems to struggle with is they treat vehicle sequences as just a room full of bad guys, and the vehicle is a type of bad guy. So instead of a massive vehicle battle, you enter a room, and it's a big room, and on the other side of the room is a small clearing where a wraith is sitting there, or some ghosts that are just kind of like zigzagging back and forth and waiting for you. Versus, like, the older Halo games, where you've got these massive stretches of terrain where you can chase after ghosts, you know, run loop-de-loops around the environment with them, shooting at them and stuff, you know, and they turn into these explosive fireballs. Like, it's almost like Star Wars Episode 1, you know, where the speeder bikes, where you blow them up, and it's like, boo, 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 and the thing starts spinning, and it's just this fireball. In Halo 5, I just remember a lot of the vehicle sequences, it was usually, they were isolated to arenas, and they couldn't really move within those arenas. And Halo Infinite is open world, but it's the exact same design philosophy of the vehicles are, like, chained and locked to certain parts of the open world. You don't really have vehicle chases anymore. So it's really just you driving up to the thing, zigzagging back and forth and shooting at it until it starts glowing red. The pilot jumps out, and then you kill the pilot. And then, you know, rinse and repeat over and over and over again. Finally caught one of your streams. I got a question. What made you come up with the idea of the evolution video on the big splody box? It was community suggestions. The community votes for what they want to see as an evolution video, and I oblige. Atarka says, this is why you should be working there, because you love Halo and get it. I feel like the people in charge don't love Halo, and they just like it for the money. Well, I feel like, unfortunately, one of the things about liking a franchise is don't work on it unless, you know... I mean, that's not to say, like, you know, don't chase your dreams or anything, but I guess, like, be careful if you get too close to something you love. It could easily crush your love of that thing. You think of kind of like Bungie employees, and how if you ever ask a Bungie employee what they think of Halo 2, they'll tell you that game sucked. It sucked. Everything about it was bad. The encounters were bad. Sandbox was bad. Like, because for them, they know what it could have been because they developed the game. And what they shipped was a compromise. We're the fans, so we just love Halo 2. And it's like, if you develop that thing, you know what it could have been. And so it won't be as cool, you know. What you launch will always be a compromise. And if you don't have, like, the stomach, I guess, for that, then it's like, you know. I mean, of course, though, I would love to be in charge of a Halo game, because I got a lot of ideas. My first Halo game would probably suck, though. Let's take this.
Enemy returns their flag.
Evolution of Halo's biomes. Evolution of Halo's biomes. I feel like that would almost be more of like an evolution of Halo's technology, you know, like how it renders environments and stuff. What is your favorite Forerunner installation? Now that's a good question. Probably the Arc. Just because it has the most variety. But I guess in terms of like Halo rings, probably the first Halo ring. Just because I like how clear its skybox is and how alien it looks. Halo 2 is a lot more, like, atmospheric. And because of that, sometimes the ring can kind of get obscured by the storm clouds.
An ally returned our flag.
Is Destiny 2 Telesto just Halo 2 netcode in one gun since it breaks all the time? Yeah, I heard the Telesto is causing people problems again, which is kind of funny. Infinite in hindsight had 85% of the cutscenes of Chief and the weapon in a dark room with her in his hand. Yeah, you can definitely tell that part of me is almost like scared that it's due to the backlash that Halo 5 had. You can tell with Infinite, the resources and production budget for the cutscenes are really down compared to Halo 4 and definitely Halo 5. Like, Halo 5 is, like, you know, not great as the cutscenes are in that game. There's production value behind them, where in Halo Infinite, it feels like they didn't have a lot of resources and budget to work with. So it was almost more like a stage play, where it's actors walking around the stage and talking dramatically to each other. Can we all agree that no ADS on all weapons is a good thing, except for Halo 5? I wouldn't say except for Halo 5, or is that example Halo 5? Because I didn't like the ADS in Halo 5. That's not very Halo-y to me. Freshy Samuel says, Chief is more interesting in Halo 3 than in Halo 2. In 3, he's a badass, but he's concerned about the situation and takes it seriously. In 2, he's just a wisecracking badass. What's interesting about that is... there is a Bungie design document, or not a design document, but a... Damn, what's it called? It's basically like a template for like people to follow, where it's like, here's the rules of the game we're currently developing. And Master Chief was compared by Bungie to Superman, if I remember right. If it wasn't Superman, it was somebody else. But the idea was supposed to be that they were like, for Halo Combat Evolved, it's just like the player, you know? But for Halo 2, we definitely want to lean into the idea that the player is awesome and cool, and Chief needs to reflect that. John says a game Bible. I don't think a game, maybe a game Bible. Maybe that's the term. I'm not too familiar with it, but... hated the way Infinite's ring was broken apart. I don't mind the idea of a broken ring. In fact, that presents a lot of interesting ideas for landscapes. Like, couldn't you imagine, like, what would it look like if a giant meteor just punched through a Halo ring? Like, the frayed metal coming up beneath the ground and stuff on the impact site. Like, there's a lot of room for interesting visual variety. Just... for some reason, they went with these hexagon pillars, which I don't think look nearly as good as the like Halos 1 through Reach, like that look for the Forerunner stuff when it's under construction, how it almost kind of looks like wires and cables and like circuit boards and stuff like that look. Example Halo 5. Okay, got it. Have you seen Xperia's video on how to fix Halo? I have. In fact, it's kind of similar to the one I did. Which doesn't surprise me, because Hidden Xperia and I, we're usually on the same page about a lot of things. It's been a long time since I talked to him, though. It's been a long time since we just vented to each other. Clint Eastwood as the man with no name was the comparison. Oh, for Halo 2 Chief? Okay, that's in. If you have pictures, I'd like to see them, because I know that there's a picture floating around of it. Hey, Late Night, do you think the potential for Infinite Story DLCs are high? I guess. I mean, is it another Halo campaign built with this technology? I think the potential is there for something being more solid than Infinite's campaign, and for all the issues Infinite's campaign has, it's still solid. I have issues with it. It's not flawless, not by a long shot, but it's... if we got another experience exactly like Halo Infinite, but with more polish, that, you know, I wouldn't be angry, because I still had a lot of fun playing through Halo Infinite. And I'm excited about the mission replay. But I'd be interested to see if maybe the fact that, like, the tools are, for the most part, like, complete now, if that means that, like, DLC, I guess, would be a little bit more solid, a little bit more stable, even visually look a bit better. Because you look at some of these like post-launch maps that are coming out. I say post-launch maps like there wasn't an arena map and a big team battle map released. But they look better than the launch maps, like across the board, right? What do you think of the Banished goals story-wise in Infinite's campaign? Personally, I felt that their goals aren't clearly as defined as the Covenant's in the original trilogy. See, it's interesting you say that because Actman and I, back when the campaign launched, we talked about this story a lot, and I told him that you think of like that you know, from Halo 2, where you've got the prophet who's like, I will light the holy rings and burn a path into the divine beyond. Like, you know what the Covenant want. You know what their goal is. You know what victory is for the Covenant, but you don't know what victory means for the Banished. They want to something? Survive? Revenge? What is it? I hope it's not revenge, because revenge is a very boring motivation for an enemy to have.
Enemy returns their flag.
I just want like an unapologetically evil antagonist where like the Banished have just this insane idea that they want to do. And it's like, okay, there's no, we can't reason with them. Like, there is no middle ground here. Whereas with the Banished, I feel like the middle ground could be like, what are your fucking AI just blew up the brute homeworld? Like, okay, what if we tried somebody? Like, what if we had trial? Like, there could be peaceful resolution with the Banished, where I feel like the Covenant, there's no peaceful resolution there, you know? And the Banished are a cool idea. They need a motivation, and I hope to God the motivation is not revenge. I hope it's not revenge. I liked that the Banished's motivation in Halo Wars 2 was essentially just like pure greed. They wanted the Ark. You know, they even gave the
Enemy returns their
they gave the Spirit of Fire the chance to stand down. They're like, leave. Go away. And the Spirit of Fire was like, no, we're standing our ground. And that's why they're at war with them.
Repulsor obtained.
The enemy has your flag.
Enemy
Oh.
flag carrier.
Whoopsie daisy. I keep forgetting I'm not on bumper jumper. And oh god, that was embarrassing, that miss. Oh god.
Returned our flag.
Banished wants to settle the rings, I think, no? Well, from what I understand, and this is, granted, this is not told via the story, it's told in-game via those audio logs, which I don't like the audio logs. I think it's very weird that the Banished just have audio tapes, record their innermost thoughts, and then litter them about their patrol, you know, throughout the day. Like, why would Eshram be like, you know, Dear Diary, here's what I think about this situation. I need to go yell at Master Chief, and just leave it there. You know, it's very dumb within the logic of the world to happen. I kind of prefer like written terminals and stuff because those could be a little bit more vague. But in those diaries, the Banished essentially say that when Cortana detonated the ring, it initiated a slip space jump that zapped the Banished forces and UNSC forces to an unknown part of the galaxy. So nobody knows where they are. So the Banished are more like there's this great thing that a comedian said one time. There's like one of my favorite things I've ever heard in the longest time, where he's like, if you ever get lost in the woods, just make a house. Boom, now you're not lost, you live here. And that's essentially what the Banished are doing. They're like, we're not lost, we live here. Like, they're just settling the ring because they don't know where they are in the Milky Way.
The enemy carrier has
And they don't have, like, the resources to get back home. Oh, God.
An ally returned our flag.
I thought it was established in Infinite that the Banished kind of wanted revenge for Cortana destroying the Brute's homeworld. That is what I gather, and I hope that there's more to it, because Atriox wants to also free the Endless, which is kind of interesting. So Atriox and the Endless, I give a bit more of a pass, even though the Endless so far, like, okay, like, I get it, but what are they, you know? You got to be a little bit more interesting. You can't just promise that they're indeed very mean and scary and then do nothing with that. You can't just talk at me. You have to show me stuff. The Endless, they were basically imprisoned for the crime of surviving a Halo ring, which is something the Forerunners did not anticipate, and they're so terrified of losing their power that they were like, we just gotta lock these things up and throw away the key. So the Endless, they feel kind of like, they're like, this fucking sucks. Like, we did nothing wrong. Our first contact with another species, and they were just like, you guys suck because we don't know what you are. We're locking you up. So the Endless, they hate the Milky Way. They hate the Forerunners, which the Forerunners are dead, so I'm of the opinion, I'm like, okay, so problem solved, Endless. Like, you guys shouldn't be bad guys anymore. Problem has been solved. The Forerunners are gone. But that's basically, Endless want revenge, Banished want revenge. They have a mutual alignment that they both like revenge. But as for Atriox, the people he wants revenge on, they're still alive, which is the human race, for building AIs that destroyed the Brute homeworld. The Endless, though, the Forerunners are dead. They've been dead for a very long time. When she's like, you know, the Forerunner lies are at an end. I am the harbinger of the truth. It's like, you're hundreds of thousands of years late. Like, they're gone. They've been dead for a while. Everything's fine now. Go back to sleep. I'm sure your planet is still out there. Just free the rest of your buddies and go back to your planet, you know? We'll send an ambassador. We want to know more about you. I don't get why the Endless are, like, what do they want? What does revenge mean? The Forerunners are dead already. See, Banished still drew First Blood in Halo Wars 2, says G Master Sub-Zero. They definitely did draw First Blood. But I guess it's First Blood in that literally, yes, First Contact was violent, but it's one of those things where you could probably solve it diplomatically by being like, okay, that First Contact was bad, but we could still settle this, find the troops that are responsible for drawing First Blood and penalize them, you know? And I feel like Atriox, at least, he seems to be like a man of honor. He'd understand something like that. He'd be like, okay, I guess you guys didn't really do anything wrong. Maybe the Endless believe they deserve the mantle of responsibility? Oh, man, I hope not. I'm so tired of the mantle. I'm so tired of that story. From what I understand, the Endless, they have the ability to either alter time or control aspects of time, or they are timeless, or something to do with time, and that scared the bejeebus out of the Forerunners. As well as the Endless, something about their biology or their technology, or just something about them, like they could survive the firing of a Halo ring. You know, Halos can't destroy them. But what's kind of weird about that is I feel almost like, okay, well, the Halo rings didn't destroy the Endless. And then the Forerunners are like, oh god, this is bad, we gotta lock them up. Why not just kill them? Like, we killed the Harbinger with ballistic weapons fired from a gas-powered rifle. Or, like, you know, projectiles from a gas-powered rifle, like ballistic weaponry. We killed the Harbinger, like... Surely the Forerunners could just, like, nuke their planet if they were so scared of them. Like, oh no, our sci-fi gadget didn't kill them. Drop a nuke. I don't know, the imprisoning them seems like a recipe for disaster, at least in my opinion. Uh-oh, we've got a bot. Begone bot. Because the Forerunners wanted to know their biology to survive Halo pulses themselves. Is that true, or is that an interpretation? Because from what I remember of the... I remember line for line, if Halo cannot kill them, then it shall imprison them.
Enemy flag carrier.
Halo, evolution of Halo's Legos branding and UI. That's a pretty interesting idea.
Ally returned our flag.
Their time-related abilities combined with the Halo Ring tech, which also plays with time and space stuff. As in, like, why they weren't just killed. Well, the Forerunners, they don't... That didn't seem to be their priority when they stood trial, you know, and then were in prison. They seemed, like, deeply scared of them and wanted them to basically fade into the background, to the point that they also, like, erased all records of them and were essentially like, no, we're just locking these things up. We're not experimenting on them. We're not studying them or anything. We want as few Forerunners to know about these things as possible. They just locked them up, threw away the keys, and erased records of contact with them. You know, to the point that even, like, the monitors who were able to experiment on and study the flood, the monitor didn't even know that the Endless were down there. Like, she had to discover it. Like, nobody was experimenting on them. They were just imprisoned. What is your favorite HUD throughout the games? I think the Halo Reach HUD is probably my favorite. Just that era of Halo, like the Halo 3 through Halo 4, like just that look for the HUD has always been my favorite version of the Halo HUDs. Come on.
New construction applied.
Could you imagine feeling the rings fire and just looking around like, what the fuck was that? Yeah, right? On top of that, could you imagine, like, okay, so, what is going on? Oh, did I just hop into an enemy Warhog? Oops. Like, could you imagine also, so the Endless is homeworld. I'm trying to think about the logistical nightmare of only the Endless surviving the firing of Halo. So, okay, all life in the galaxy is wiped away. That probably includes plants, right? Microbes, bacteria, stuff like that, right? Or is that not, like, factored into it? So, okay, the galaxy is wiped clean of all life. So could you imagine, like, the Endless, like an endless farm or something, where they're, like, farming chickens. You've got, like, grass, flora, and stuff, and just go, boom, and suddenly you're on a rock. Like a barren rock. Like, even the soil is dead. Like, trees, nope, they're gone. They've been atomized. Your space chickens, they're all dead. Nothing's left of them. Grass, gone. Medicine, probably, too, gone, because, you know, some medicines come from bacteria. Like, it would probably totally fuck with, like, their culture, their way of life. Fenton Williamson says, could it be that maybe Halo did kill them, but they came back? No, from what I understand, it's the Endless are a creature, they're a race of creatures that the Forerunners didn't even know existed, and the only reason they found them was because after the galaxy was cleaned of all life, the only planet making any noise in the galaxy was the one that the Endless come from, where they're like, what the fuck is this? We missed something. How's that possible? And then they're like, what are these things? That's how the Forerunners discovered the Endless. It's specifically only sentient life, says Void Caliber. Okay. Okay. Having studied nerve biology, it's kind of weird to imagine tech so advanced that it can selectively kill only things with a nervous system. It is kind of weird, right? Just got here. What are you talking about? We're talking about the logic of the Halo rings. Because I was under the interpretation that the Flood, it wasn't just a thing with a central nervous system. Like, it was just, like, life, like organic matter, organic tissue. Because I feel like if I was an all-consuming parasite, one of the first things I'd want to do is adapt myself to be able to utilize anything organic. Like, there are parasitic microorganisms that prey on each other. You know, in the Flood, they operate at, like, a microscopic level. You know, they can change your DNA. So I feel like what's stopping them from being able to use microbes? You know, I feel like if I was the Flood, first thing I'd do after getting my ass kicked is I'd just live for a couple million years feasting off of, like, you know, microscopic life. I'd basically stay at a microscopic level. I wouldn't approach biology, and I would get to the point where I'd spread throughout the Milky Way and become so embedded in just, like, microscopic life as a whole. That's when I'd spring my trap. And I'd start expanding to more advanced organisms and stuff. Because you think about, like, microplastic and pollution, like, we're at the point where almost everybody has a bit of microplastic in them. Basically do that with the Flood. It was very dumb that the Flood immediately were like, we want to turn everybody into space zombies. Like, no, a space zombie is scary, you know? I don't want to join your timeless chorus. Your timeless chorus is scary. But if they infected everybody subtly, without turning them into space zombies, and then all at once flip the switch, and boom, now everyone is space zombies. Opulent Halo is here. I recently got interested in the campaign, and it's okay. I don't feel like it's as bad as some people say. Oh, the multiplayer? The campaign, yes, and the multiplayer, yes, as well.
Enemy flight carrier.
Halo Infinite's multiplayer is a lot of fun. The problem is there's not enough of it, you know?
We've got sudden death.
Sudden death.
We're currently talking about the Halo rings, the Flood, the logic of the Halo universe, because
Enemy captured.
I'm of the belief that the Flood should not be like, the Flood shouldn't be picky with their food, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's very stupid to only want to infect something that has a central nervous system. Like, go after everything, you know? Like, trees, boom, melt that down into Flood biomass and stuff. So I feel like if all sentient life is wiped out in the galaxy and all that remains is the Flood and then they starve to death, well, I'm like, okay, if I'm the Gravemind, I'm thinking, oh, crud, all sentient life is gone. I'm going to start a farm, and I'm going to start growing trees, and I'm going to live off of those trees now. Like, checkmate, Forerunners. I'm a little lost. If they found the Endless after firing the Halos, how did the Forerunners lock them up if they should be dead too? Was there a previous Halo fire, or did the Forerunners survive? So, according to the lore, the Forerunners, they basically had a select few people around to be on the Ark, which was safely outside of the blast zone to be able to push the red button, so to speak. And they were there to kind of, like, you know, look around, make sure the coast is clear. Like, yeah, it definitely killed everybody. There is nobody left alive. And then those few Forerunners got the process started on reseeding life in the galaxy. And then basically what they did is they did self-imposed exile for their crime against life, where they stripped themselves of their armor, which makes them, you know, functionally immortal, and just left the galaxy to go die on some planet somewhere of natural causes. So in surviving the firing of the Halo ring, checking around, they found a planet where life was not destroyed, and it was the Endless. The ultimate goal of the Flood is to become vegan. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the Gravemind consumes some of the smartest minds in the galaxy. It's so smart that it can
Fatalities give points.
red pill you into siding with the crazy space zombies, you know? Like, it's so intelligent that just by talking to it for too long, you go insane. Because of how smart it is. Like, I feel like a creature that smart would be able to find out that, like, just war, violence is not the way to go. You want to, like, you know, slowly boil the frog, so to speak. Don't immediately jump to space zombies. Like, the Gravemind and I, we have to have a chat, because I got some ideas on how it can take over the galaxy next time. Honestly, by the lore, it sounds like the Flood wouldn't be as easy to defeat as it has been recently. Yeah, it is kind of silly that the Gravemind was able to be stopped so easily, and at least according to 343, they've explored the interesting idea of... So according to Halo 3, the Flood were defeated forever. Halo, it's finished. You know, the Flood are done. And now 343 has kind of said, well, okay, not every Flood organism in the galaxy has been destroyed. There's still scattered outbreaks here and there, but for the most part, the threat of an organized Flood is done. It's just localized outbreaks. Like, if a planet gets taken over by the Flood in the Halo universe now, I don't think it would be a big deal, because it would be like, whoop-de-doo, you now have a planet of zombies, and you have no way to get off that planet, you know? Like, good for you, guys. Like, the galactic threat of the Flood are essentially finished. So you can still have some stories with Flood outbreaks. You just won't have the Gravemind. Deep Fried Nendroid says, love the stream so far and all the topics that came with it. If there was a way to gift memberships like you can with subs on Twitch, I would. Deep Fried Nendroid, it's a pleasure to see you, friend. Tomorrow we're gonna be doing some more Halo 2 over on Twitch. We're gonna start the Halo 2 campaign. The Flood photosynthesizes. Siding with the Flood seems like the answer. Well, I mean, is it? Because I mean, it's be a space zombie or don't be a space zombie. I don't want to be a space zombie, so I wouldn't side with the Gravemind. That being said, the Gravemind's tactics for galactic domination so far, I have issues with. Not that I want the Flood to win, but if the Flood do want to win, they gotta change their tactics. The Gravemind needs to understand that the last thing that would convince someone to join him is by sending something with its neck snapped running at you, screaming incoherently about joining a timeless chorus. Like, that's not gonna convince people to join your side. That's gonna scare the living shit out of them. Being a space zombie is nice. They have ice cream. Well, no, the space zombies probably wouldn't have ice cream, because ice cream came from milk, and milk comes from cows, and those cows would be space zombie cows. So no milk. The Gravemind doesn't have ice cream. Hello, I found your channel by enhancing the graphics of Halo 3 and saw you were live, so I decided to drop by and say hi. Welcome, Donuts Gaming. I'm going to be working on using Reshade on Halo Infinite, because I actually got Reshade working on Halo Infinite. Ice cream, you say? Space zombies ain't so bad. No. The Gravemind does not have access to ice cream, because ice cream is made with dairy, which comes from cows, which cows would not be there, because the Gravemind would turn them into space zombies. Fenton Williamson says, it could be a case where initially checking the planets, they found nothing, then all of a sudden, boom, these weirdos all of a sudden showed up. For the Endless? Or the Flood? Well, that's essentially what happened with the Forerunners. They fired the rings, and since the Milky Way was basically cleansed of all life, the only planet still reading signs of life is where the Endless came from, and the Forerunners were like, what in Sam's hell are these? We've never seen these before. Ooh. I don't like how they talk about the Endless in the campaign. They sound like the most dangerous species, but only because they can't be killed by halos, like the engineers. Yeah, it's... The next galactic threat for a Halo game does not need to be worse than the Flood. I don't think we have to have escalating scales of threat, you know? We could easily have something that's lower in scale than the Flood. And you could still have good stories come out of that. Fenton Williamson donates $2 and just says endless. Endless. Thank you, by the way, man. That's very kind of you. I've also got Halo Miner, who donates $1. That's very kind of you. Can you do a 343 Guilty Spark voice impression? Maybe. Maybe. I don't have the voice filter, though. It's called a guitar flanger. But, hang on. Greetings, greetings, greetings. I am 343 Guilty Spark. My voice just cracked. The Flood is spreading. No. Greetings. I am 343 Guilty Spark. Someone has released the Flood. Someone has released the Flood. I'm getting there. I feel like I'm like tuning my voice box. I'm like trying to find the correct pitch. Greetings, greetings. 343 Guilty Spark. Spark. It's somewhere around there, his voice. I'd really like a Dead Space style game based on the Mona Lisa. Dude, me too, right? That's not bad. Hey, it's not bad? I thought I was embarrassing myself right there. I tried to do a Mr. Krabs impression a while ago, and I just sounded like a pirate. My voice, my muscle memory kept defaulting to, "Arg, I'm a pirate." So good to know that my Guilty Spark is not half bad. 343 oddly sounds like OG Obi-Wan. Oh, the like, well, of course I know him. He's me. Yeah. Hello there. Most long-running stories are supposed to have dips in scale from time to time, or return to the basics that put the next huge conflict in perspective. Yeah, for real. Like, I kind of actually wish that Halo would maybe do that. Gooby says it would be awesome if the Endless ended up releasing the Flood and then get infected themselves. Well, I feel like, wouldn't that just end the Endless? Like, we wouldn't learn any more about them? Like, we're the Endless, we're here, and now we're all space zombies. Like, imagine if the MCU went from dusting Thanos directly to Galactus is here now. Essentially, and that's I don't like that line of the Endless being worse than the Flood. My hope is that is just, like, hyperbole by the characters and that the Endless are not literally worse than the Flood, because that's going to be a very forced thing. Halo Snake says the Gravemind should have just said, want to join my clan. Yeah, right? Like, I feel like the Gravemind's idea of approaching people and being like, do you want to join me? You'll have no individuality and you'll be gross and rotting. Like, I can't think of a single person that would be like, you know what, that doesn't sound so bad. Halo Miner donated another $1. Thank you, friend. Oh, somebody's saying, I am a genius. Here, I can, let's see. He has a very high-pitched giggle. No. I am a genius. He's kind of like that, right? That's a little bit too much effort put into the giggle. It should come a little bit more naturally. Dude, if we're talking about Guilty Spark for a second, can we talk about how they killed it with the sub-monitor in Halo Infinite's campaign? Like, the sub-monitor is perfect. I described in the past that a monitor for a Halo ring should be kind of like the creepy butler that gives off bad vibes, like, "Ooh, welcome, the master will be home soon, woo!" You know, and they're like, come, your room is ready," and they're like creepy, and they're like muttering to themselves and clearly insane, and nobody's home, and the lights are all off, and you feel like you're walking into a trap. Like, that should be how you handle, like, a monitor. You know, monitors are insane butlers that can't be trusted. Hot Dog Guy says, "I like Firefight." Dude, I love Firefight, too. Firefight is that's my jam. My favorite part from Adjacent Resolution is before the Harbinger fight, when he reminded me a lot of 343 Guilty Spark. Yeah, dude, God, I fucking what I also love is that, so it's the weapon is so naive because she's never encountered a monitor before. Chief knows what they are, and he knows that they are consistently not to be trusted. And so I like that he doesn't even flinch when the monitor starts shooting a laser at him in that cutscene. He just calmly steps and shields the weapon and puts her back in his head. Because it's like, here we fucking go. Like, he knew it was coming. I really liked Chief's interactions with the sub monitor because he just, like, it didn't faze him. Like, he knew it was coming. They're all the same. And then I love all of the various interactions with the sub monitor. His boss fight is just him incoherently babbling and yelling at you about, like, the various ways he will have to clean the floor after he, like, even his taunts, he fits in his duties on the ring with them. Dude, the sub monitor was pretty good. The actual monitor, I wasn't a fan of the actual monitor and the way that they handled her, because she was, like, a little bit more serious, I guess. The voice cadence was correct, you know, the kind of, like, before even introducing herself, just like that, help me, and, like, bouncing against the glass. I'm like, okay, that's very monitor-like. But then kind of, I think of her, like, screaming. I don't know. It's like, I don't think monitors should ever be, like, existential or something. Like, I know that the books made them seem that way, but, like, I don't know. I think of, like, the last time I heard a monitor scream was Guilty Spark, where he's just like, of course, I can tell you anything about the blah, 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 you know, and he gets sucked away by Tartarus. Like, monitors are, like, comedy value. I don't want to hear one genuinely screaming in pain, you know? It's just weird. It rubs me the wrong way. Somebody's adding Halo Follower. I'm not sure if that means that Halo Follower is in the chat currently. Thoughts on Halo 5's Exuberant Witness personality? So Exuberant Witness, don't ask me about Exuberant Witness because my opinions on Halo 5's campaign are compromised. Exuberant Witness was in... I'm not reliable when it comes to opinions. When Exuberant Witness was introduced in the Halo 5 campaign, I was at peak irritation with the story. And so Exuberant Witness comes in, the lens flare effect on her eye looks bad because it's dark purple, which if you're in sunlight, I don't know if you've ever taken, like, a flashlight outside, like a dark blue flashlight or something, like, or a light of some kind. You don't see like a fog of dark blue. Like, that's not how light works when you're outside. So her coming in sunlight and it's like glowing dark blue. I'm like, no, wrong. That's not how light works in the real world. And that annoyed me. And then the voice filter was wrong. They weren't using a guitar flanger. So I was at maximum pettiness. I was very wicked hella cheesed about the Halo 5 story. So all I saw was wrong, wrong, wrong. I hate this stupid game. And I was very salty. So still to this day, I don't like Exuberant Witness. I see her and I'm reminded of the immense disappointment I felt with Halo 5's campaign. Elliot Insta says, "You make Halo even more funny than it already is." Thanks. I'm glad I bring out some of the comedy value of the Halo series. I missed the Spartan laser, but I think Infinite has too many anti-vehicle weapons. Yeah, the Spartan laser, it's cool. At least it was cool. I'm not quite sure what happened to the visual effects presentation in Halo 3, or in Halo 5, how it was just like pew, and it was just this little laser, versus the last 3 incarnations where it was this loud, like, ear blasting sound and this big bright flash that just tore apart vehicles. But mechanically, the Spartan laser is a no fun device. It's just you get into a vehicle and it's like, no, bam, you know. Elliot says, "I said fun, not funny, but hey, you the best." Aw, thank you, man. I'm glad I make Halo fun then. Isaiah says, "What about her as an announcer?" The announcer lines are pretty good, but again, it's like I'm compromised. My opinions on Exuberant. I'm very, very, very compromised. Skewer is the new laser, says Avery. I also think the skewer is just like a more interesting weapon.
Lost the lead.
Not to say, like, obviously my ideal solution is that when all is said and done, I want every weapon from the series back, including the stuff from Halo 4 and 5. And that includes Spartan lasers. But the beauty of Halo is that you don't need every gun on every map, because it's all within developer control. So it's like if people are worried about balancing, you just throw the Spartan laser into custom games. But I guess just based on the way that, like, you know, production costs and stuff, and then like the Slip Space engine is just the Halo engine, but they actually gave it an official name now. Enough has changed under the hood to where you can't directly port over content from previous games. Like, you will need to partially redevelop it. Like, you know, I see a lot of people saying, you know, like the Halo 5 shotgun is a leftover asset from Halo 5, and it's, I don't know much about it, but from what I understand, that was actually developed into the engine. It wasn't like just a holdover from Halo 5. What are your thoughts on Forge and Halo Infinite? Dude, the leaks look awesome for Forge. I really would like to see the Brute Shot back. Yeah, like, I'm bummed out that this game doesn't have, like, a physics disruption weapon. You know, the hammer, it swings too slow, and its role has been kind of like, it's been more or less turned into just an energy sword that swings slowly. You know, it's a melee weapon used for getting kills. So the fact that there isn't, like, a physics disrupting weapon like the Brute Shot or the concussion rifle, it's a little bit disappointing. I'd love to see the Brute Shot back. Oh boy. Yeah, that's usually how Mauler fights go. It's like a little bit of a tap dance, ring around the rosy shenanigans as we both miss each other. If 343 adds another Banished announcer, what species should it be? Dude, I'd love to have a Prophet announcer. I'd love to have a Grunt announcer. Jackal could, dude, just screw it. Have them all. Have them all. I'd even love, like, a gag announcer, which is a hunter, and there's just no spoken English. It's just just like a roaring if you do good. What are your opinion on monitors of non-Halo installations? Do you think it fits or not? I also don't like that there are the same monitor chassis is also. I like the idea of the monitor specifically being designed for Halo installations. Not that there shouldn't be monitors on other Forerunner worlds. I think that makes sense. But I feel like the design should be radically different. So, like, Exuberant Witness, instead of looking like, well, Guilty Spark, I feel like Exuberant Witness should have looked like something completely different, you know? I'm thinking of, like, Genesis. I'm like, okay, like, that world is more organic, I'd say, than any Forerunner installation we've ever been to. Have Exuberant Witness kind of look like a robotic bird of some kind, or some kind of scent. Think of, like, in the trailers for, Destiny 2 Beyond Light, like that weird thing that was with the exostrate, like something like that looks more organic. Have her look like she's part of the world that she's taking care of. The Infinite Hunters suck. They do. They're not very fun to fight. I want to bring back the remote detonator from Halo 4. Me too, man. Dude, the remote detonator was cool. It bums me out so much that of all the guns that carried over into Halo 5, they did not bring back the remote detonator, which was arguably the most interesting weapon in that sandbox. I'm a big fan of Halo weapons that are either bizarre and quirky or have really weird alt-fire functions. Whether it be like the Combat Evolved Plasma Rifle, where it has that stunning locking effect, or the Heat Wave, where you can like rotate and the sheets of hard light bounce off of surfaces and stuff. Give me that. You know, I love all that stuff. Do you think Halo lore is too complicated now? I only just learned 343 is still alive, but in a robot body. And the precursors and the Forerunners are basically the same thing. So the Forerunners and precursors are not the same thing. They are very different things, which I'd say that is very silly. That I feel like the Forerunners, they should not be called Forerunners. That should be a term we assign to them because they came before us. And I feel almost like for the book, what they could have totally done was have, if you want it to be really cool for the book, every time that the Forerunner species was named in the book, have it blacked out. Almost like it's classified or locked out. Because from what I understand, the Forerunner trilogy of books, they're kind of from the perspective of Oni gathering intelligence. So have it classified. I think the fact that the ancient alien race literally named themselves the Forerunners, that's a little bit silly. And so because the name Forerunner is already in use, the even ancienter alien race needed to have another name, so they are the Precursors. It's like, that's a little bit silly. That the Forerunners have their own Forerunners and they're called the Precursors. Were Precursors a 343 or Bungie creation? They, from what I understand, were a 343 creation. They were introduced in the Forerunner saga books. And granted, listen, the name Precursor is very dumb, but the actual idea behind the Precursors I fucking love. It's basically Lovecraftian horror in Halo. They really got to buff the Forerunner weapons, in my opinion. In campaign, the Heatwave and Cindershot are awful, and in PvP, they all seem to be worse versions of UNSC weapons. I wouldn't say that. The Heatwave, I can't think of any UNSC weapons that are in the game currently that remind me of it. But as far as the Heatwave, from what I understand, the Heatwave, its damage value changes as you rotate it. And I'm like, I don't I don't agree with that. It's hard enough to use already. Just let people get the kill, you know? What's your favorite hunter? Mine is either 3 or 5. My favorite hunters are the ones from the original trilogy, including, believe it or not, the Combat Evolved Hunter. I'm not a big fan of where they went after the original trilogy, because I think they got a little bit too tanky. I feel like a good Halo enemy is one that you can take down almost immediately if you know what you're doing. And the Halo 5 hunters got a little bit away from that, where they became more like Destiny bosses, where your progress was halted, and it's this big tanky thing with a lot of health. You couldn't even really bait them, because, you know, if they got close to you, it was like, boom, like an immediate melee attack that you can't sidestep. You know, and they're blocking everything you do. You can't really get behind them, because they always have their back to you. I feel like a good hunter, one that feels really fun, is it's dangerous at a range, and the closer and closer you get to it, the easier it becomes, until when you're up close to it, it becomes basically a bull, where it's predictable. It charges at you, and that's when you just unload your rounds into its back and take it down. Like, the journey is getting close to it. Because I feel like a bad Halo enemy, you think of, you know, regardless of if we like them or not, the Promethean Knights of Halo 4, people have a lot of negative memories of those, because they unfortunately overstay their welcome because of that teleporting effect. You know, the fights with them take just a little bit too long to conclude. Now, I actually really like the Halo 5 Knights. I think that was pretty awesome, and kind of in line with Halo. In fact, I think that the Knights of Halo 5 are better hunters than the hunters of Halo 5. Because the Knight, it's this thing with an explosive weapon. It's crazy, it's ridiculous, but it's got a weakness that's super easy to exploit. And when you do that, it's basically toast. You know, it goes down really quick.
Capturing a zone.
I always felt that Forerunner was a shorthand translation by Oni. Or was a sort of translation. Believe it or not, no. According to the lore, the Forerunners themselves call themselves Forerunners. It's very silly. Because didn't, for the longest time, Guilty Spark just referred to the Forerunners as my creators?
Claiming a zone.
Like, it was usually everybody else that would call them Forerunners. You know, Guilty Spark would just be like, my creators did blah, 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 blah. It was only really Halo 3, if I remember right, where he said, you know, you are Forerunner. And I assume that's just because he was around organics for so long. Ah!
Your team is close to total control. Your team has total control. You got new zones in
Neither Heatwave or Bulldog do extra headshot damage. Is that true?
Requisitioned.
Huh. That's interesting. So I wonder why other weapons do headshot damage. do. That probably shouldn't do headshot damage, kind of like automatic weapons and stuff. Because that's always also kind of like a little bit of a Halo taboo.
zones are ready for capture.
It probably might just be old man yelling at clouds, but for game balancing purposes, automatic weapons are slot machines, essentially. You know, that randomized spread, they're very easy to use because, you know, I mean, that, you can just hold down the trigger. You don't need to pace your shots. You don't need to do anything. You just center the screen and hold down the trigger. So the fact that the slot machine that's relatively easy to use and has a lot of range, the fact it also has a headshot multiplier that can randomly trigger based on if the randomized bloom lands on the head. Older Halo titles always balanced that out by making sure automatic weapons did not have headshot multipliers, because that would make them a little bit too easy to use. me see. Did you enjoy the Skimmers? I did enjoy the Skimmers. Not because the Skimmers are like, you know, like, oh my god, they're so interesting. No, they're not, you know. They're not. They're basically like, they're basically grunts that don't run away, I guess. Not even that. They're like, imagine like those carbine jackals if they moved a little bit less. Like the Skimmers just kind of like hang out there. Why I like the Skimmers, I think, though, is because just functionally they are not offensive to fight. In fact, they are fine. They're fun, you know? Like, I would not say I had a miserable time fighting the Skimmers. If they showed up in future Halo games, hey, it's the Skimmers. They're back, you know? They got a nice little design. I like their voice lines. I like their sound effects. I fucking love knocking them out of the sky and seeing them like, and they just like a World War II airplane just, you know, into the ground. Yeah, I really like the Skimmers. They're not the most mechanically complex thing on planet Earth, but I also don't think they have to be. They can just be fun.
A team member is capturing a zone.
And I also think it's kind of like insane that 343 they crafted a new alien creature that would not look out of place if it was in like a legacy Halo title. Like the Skimmers look very much at home in the Halo universe. And I feel like that's a criticism that 343's grappled with for a while. So for them to be like, okay, boom, we got this new art style, first new alien creature we make, home run, looks like it came from the Halo universe. Like, it's good job by the art team and animation team.
Zone captured.
Your team is close to total control.
The enemy is capturing a zone.
I think they should have doubled down on Plasma being the EMP damage type instead of it being a whole new weapon class. Yeah, I don't mind Arc, by the way. I don't like that the functionality of weapons now in Halo has been narrowly locked down to 4 elemental damage types. Or 3 or whatever it is. Like, I'd prefer if a weapon was special not because it is hard light, but because it did this as a mechanic. I feel like all that does is kind of like restrict your creativity, because, you know, if you're making a new Forerunner weapon, well, it has to be hard light, because it's Forerunner. And if it does happen to operate via hard light, well, it has to be reflective. It has to be. Like, I feel like it would be more interesting if the weapons all just existed on their own, you know? From what I understand, the Needler is called an SMG. A kinetic SMG, if I remember right. And I'm like, I wouldn't call the Needler an SMG, let alone a kinetic weapon. Like, the Needler's just the Needler, man. You know, it lives on its own. It does its own thing.
Your team is close to total control.
I feel like you have more room for being creative when you're not boxing yourself in like that creatively.
A team member is capturing a zone.
Even the Sentinel Beam. Like, it kind of sucks that it's been boxed into this SMG role.
Victory.
Victory is yours.
Shadow Toast says he's been trying to reach me about my car's extended warranty. I appreciate that, man. Give me a second, I'll give you my credit card information. People sleep on the Infinite campaign. The AI feel is still lacking a bit, but when things ramp up, I was loving it. Somebody says also that the lack of co-op really soured people's impressions of the campaign. I agree there. Like, the Halo Infinite campaign is pretty good. It's pretty good. I think that frustrations are currently what's souring a lot of people. And that's kind of like when we were talking about Exuberant Witness earlier, and I was saying, don't ask me about Exuberant Witness because my opinion on her was compromised about how I was feeling about Halo at the time. It's kind of the same situation here, where I feel like people play the Halo Infinite campaign and they get very angry because they have to go through this mess of a UI. They have to remember that there's no co-op, there's no way to replay missions or anything. There's a ton of bugs, issues, and all of that, you know, causes them to not enjoy the game. I feel like it's part of the Halo cycle is, like, as these games, you know, you think of like Halo 4, you think of like Halo 5, and now Halo Infinite. Like, as these games get bigger and bigger and they expand and fix things and improve things post-launch, a lot of the issues people have start to simmer down because they've been corrected, and then people can more rationally, I guess, like, you know, analyze what the thing is, like the Halo Infinite campaign. As well as there's a healthy helping of people play the campaign as it is right now, flaws included, and they are very aggressive against the flaws because this is now the norm for Halo, and I hate these flaws, I hate them. But then the next game comes out, and it's actually fixed some of those flaws. But now there are new flaws. So you're able to kind of revisit the past game with peace in your heart, knowing that those flaws do not become staples of the franchise, and you're able to be a bit more fair to them. I've seen some people honestly turn around on the squad mechanics of Halo 5, which blows my mind. And I think it's probably because people now know that those squad mechanics were not now the new norm for a Halo campaign. Hey, we got Classy Ham in here. My main gripe with Infinite's campaign is how formulaic the open world was. I didn't feel like I was exploring. I felt like I was moving from waypoint to waypoint, doing whatever was there. Yeah, it's this might be a hot take, which I probably shouldn't be having these, but I feel like Halo shouldn't have a tack map. The last thing I think of when I think of a Halo campaign is finishing a firefight, opening up a slow map, placing a waypoint, closing it, and then proceeding to the next area. Like, I feel like, you know, even ODST, which did have a map, at least the open world of that game was designed in a way that naturally guided you from place to place, you know, via the stop signs and stuff, as well as the layout of the streets. Halo Infinite is just like a giant field. You don't know where you're going, and so I feel like a lot of my time in Halo Infinite was spent looking at that tack map and placing waypoint markers. It broke up. I wish I could just move from encounter to encounter, like without having the need to open up a thing that takes forever to load. In fact, I almost wonder if, like, at the top of the screen they could have like a Far Cry 5-esque compass, which, or like, I guess a better example would be Skyrim, you know? Because I feel like at least with there, you're able to move on to your next destination easier, you know, without having, like, staring at a map most of the game, I guess. I think the tack map was fine, but the game would have been better off without fast travel. That's definitely true as well. I feel like fast travel kind of broke up the ring a little bit. And also, I think even for game developers, it kind of... it allowed for the game to be more boring, I guess, the act of navigating the open world, because the assumption is, well, the player, if they're bored, they can just fast travel to where they want to go. I feel like it's more interesting if it's like, no, we're going to design this without fast travel, so you, as a level designer, have to make the act of moving around the world interesting. You know, there's no shortcuts around this. It's got to be a fun game. At least that's my opinion as somebody who doesn't know how to design a game.
Look there, an enemy flag carrier.
Do you think the Prometheans will be liked by a majority of fans? For me, I don't think it will happen without changing their entire look and changing their lore. Not the majority of fans, but I'm sure the Prometheans already have like their little, you know, cult following. And I think only as time goes on and like the community decides to be angry at something else, like the Prometheans will find like a little cozy corner in the Halo universe where they are appreciated by their fans. In my opinion, open world games shouldn't come with detailed maps and waypoint markers by default. Add them for accessibility, but let the player wander around the world instead. Yeah, for sure. Or even, you know what would have been way more interesting for Halo Infinite? If instead of, for a waypoint marker, if you want to place one, have it be a tool. Remember binoculars? The last Halo game with binoculars was Halo 4. And I think some people would probably argue that the binoculars have never served a purpose. Well, I can't think of like a single Halo game that would have been more fitting than Halo Infinite. You know, an open world game with the binocular zoom. Imagine if you could physically see way off in the distance where you want to go and you just bing, place a waypoint marker there by looking at it. Versus having to open up like a Far Cry map.
Enemy returns their flag.
Let me see. 343 didn't port over their first game very well. Halo 4 and the MCC still isn't ironed out, and Reach plus the newest Forge of Halo 2 Anniversary share a lot of flaws with Halo 4 and Reach. Yeah, man, before 343 hangs up the curtains, you know, on the MCC, I've got to make a video talking about the issues with Halo Reach. Because Halo Reach is bad. It's not nearly as bad as Combat Evolved or even Halo 2, but Reach was not ported very well. A lot of artistry was lost in translation. And Halo 4 also is like, you know, Halo 4's got quite a few well, what's weird about Halo 4 is it's almost like a side grade. Ironically, there's some things that they fixed in Halo 4 that were broken on the 360 release. And I don't think they even realized that those were original bugs. There was a bug, an infamous bug, that drove me bananas about Halo 4. It was in the first level when you... What do you do? It's when the didactic first scans the ship and Chief's like, what's that? You know, and then the door opens and like all the electronics are...
Enemy captured the flag.
All the electronics are going crazy. For some reason in that game, your view model pops forward when the didactic scanning thing comes through the ship, and then when it despawns, boom, your view model pops back in. Look, if you don't believe me, load it up on the 360 right now, and you'll see it. And they fixed it on the MCC version. Or in multiplayer, the water was not dynamic on Valhalla. It was static. Like, Spartans could fling their bodies into the water, and it would not move at all. And then they fixed it on the MCC, and they fixed it by patching a bug that was in the campaign that was actually an issue. It wasn't like that on the 360, which is water was static. So they kind of accidentally universally fixed issues that were on the 360 version. So it's almost like I don't even know where to start with the Halo 4 MCC version, because there are some things that are busted about it, but then there's other things that are actually better than the 360 release. Yeah, if people say that I just mindlessly hate 343 Halo games, I've played Halo 4 enough times where I notice trivial stuff like that. Kill an enemy Spartan. Oh god, we still haven't done the machine gun. Here, we'll probably play like 2 more matches, and then I'm going to call it, because I'm starting to get a little bit tired. I think we should have a temporary map that shows us the vicinity around Chief, kind of like a hologram coming out of a device in his wrist. I'm thinking of just something that doesn't pull you out of the game and stop you. Because I feel like Halo is this one foot after the other adventure. You shouldn't be like, You know, moving, stopping, looking at the ground because of a map, moving. Where am I? Hang on, let me open up the map again. Like, oh, it's that way. Hang on, there's a mountain here. I'm lost again. Open up. Like, Halo, you should always be able to move, always know where your bearings are and stuff. Do you think this is Halo as a franchise its lowest point? Depends, because I remember the launch of Halo 5. It was super big, and then Halo 5 dropped hard. Like, I'd say that within the fandom, it's hard to tell because there are, when it comes to like the story and stuff like that, I feel like Halo hasn't, you know, Halo's been kind of like rough for a very long time now. I think Halo narratively is doing a lot better right now in terms of the fandom, but I feel like the state of the game, it's definitely a lot worse right now than Halo 5. Because remember, by this point in Halo 5's life, Halo 5 finally got firefight mode. Halo 5 has infection. It has like a ton of classic weapons. I think by this point, even the plasma rifle was added to Halo 5. Whereas with Infinite, the game is more or less exactly the same as it was at launch. They just added a new arena map and a new big team battle map.
Ball dropped. Enemy has the ball.
So I guess it depends, you know, and then even if we want to talk about the Halo show for us Halo fans is a very poopy butthole stinky, but I'd be curious to see how non-Halo fans respond to it. And I'm not talking about non-Halo fans as in like, well, I showed my sister and I told her about how bad it was, so she agreed it was also, but like isolate a whole group of people who have never even heard of Halo. They just think it's a song by Beyonce, and put them in a room and have them watch the Halo show, and then ask them their thoughts on it. I'd be curious to see what those thoughts are. Because from what I understand, a lot of people did watch the Halo show, but I haven't heard a lot of talk about it outside of the core Halo community.
Objects plus inertia.
So in a lot of ways, like, Halo is kind of bigger than it was during the Halo 5 days, but the quality is so much more inconsistent.
Active camo available.
Like, with Halo 5, the multiplayer, everyone agreed, was a lot of fun. Campaign was awful. That was the consensus, all right? But Halo 5 was very quickly able to get itself picked up off the ground. The problem was just the community was very angry about the art style, very angry about the Reclaimer saga and stuff, so it ushered in, I hate it now and I hope to never see this happen ever again to Halo, but it was an era of, like, Halo fans talking about how they can make a Halo game better, including yours truly. Art style videos, audio videos, story videos, like, music video. It was just like, dude, like, we just didn't like Halo at that point, you know? It was just like everything was about, like, what can 343 do to recapture the soul of Halo? We're kind of past that, and we all kind of are in agreement that it's like, well, at least it feels more like a Halo universe now, just where's the content?
Enemy has the ball.
What if the Banished are trying to find an immunity from the ring with the help of the Endless? That way they can use the ring against humanity without being affected from the ring, says Red Sea. From what I understand, that is what the Banished want to do. They want to weaponize the ring and kind of like turn it into, I mean, you kind of already see it, you know, with, you go into like the Forerunner interiors and there's like, they've got that deep, angry, banished red glow. Like they're trying to transform the ring into almost like their own version of High Charity, where it's just like this giant mobile space station where they all live on it.
Active camo. Inbound.
ball.
Active
There's a reaction channel called Blind Wave, and they watched the Halo show, and if I remember correctly, they thought it was good or okay. They just really hated Quan. That's fair, then. The Blind Wave, are they Halo fans, or have they never heard the
Enemy
series
has
before?
the ball.
Big brain move. Be a Halo fan and ignore the Halo show because you don't watch TV. Exactly, that's a very big brain move.
Enemy has the ball. Ball dropped.
I think Halo Infinite made better fundamental decisions than Halo 5. For sure, because Halo 5, the core of the game was enhanced mobility. So they can't add more enhanced mobility via updates. You know, they can't be like, for season 8 of Halo 5, we added Spartan prone. You can now go pro. Like, they're not going to do that. You know, they're not going to change up the core gameplay. Halo 5, unfortunately, couldn't innovate in a lot of ways because its big innovation was changing player movement. But with Halo Infinite, the big innovation is this equipment system and the focus on external factors beyond the player's core movement. So the game could change. If you're not a fan of how Halo Infinite plays or anything, it's entirely possible that with the addition of a couple new weapons, couple new equipment, couple new grenade types and stuff, the game could flow completely differently a year from now. Whereas with Halo 5, unfortunately, if you didn't like that game, no amount of new weapons is going to change the fact that you don't like it.
Enemy has the ball.
Can I ask you a question for my own research purposes, says the Lion's Honor. Sure, shoot.
Halfway to victory. Ball dropped. Enemy has the ball.
Please collect your power items.
Ball dropped.
Can the rings solo a specific race? Didn't the prototype ring kill only the elite race? I don't think rings. I think rings work indiscriminately, but you can control the blast radius, if I remember right.
Enemy has the ball. Ball dropped. Enemy has the ball.
You know what's something Halo could do with a bit of? Think of how Marvel handled Phase 4 of the MCU. Basically, they have Thanos, they have big purple Josh Brolin. Stakes are higher than they've ever been, and then everything cools off for a little bit. We have a lot of low-stakes story that isn't like the fate of the entire galaxy or anything. So, I feel kind of like, I don't know, maybe Halo could do with that. Have the Banished not be a galactic threat. Have it be more of just like isolated skirmishes with the Banished for power. Maybe even bring back some Covenant remnant groups that are like the Great Journey, blah blah blah. Have them be just like crazy religious nutters. Like, have the galaxy be okay. Everybody's rebuilding for a little bit, and tell isolated stories of war, of like skirmishes within that, with interesting characters and stuff. You know, we don't need the endless. We don't need, you know, revenge. The galaxy is at threat. The Flood, Gravemind 2 is back. Like, you know, cool down the stakes for a little bit. Let the Halo universe breathe a bit.
Enemy has the ball. Ball dropped.
In fact, you could even tell a galaxy at war story that doesn't need the galaxy to be at war. You could simply have it be a single planet being invaded and occupied by the Banished. And within the grand scheme of things, it's just a planet. But if you tell the story of the people who live on that planet, well, it does seem pretty awful. Bro, imagine if they added wall running post-launch to Halo 5. Oh, God. I feel like that was a meme in the Halo community.
Ball dropped.
I feel like that was a meme in the Halo community for the longest time, was watch Halo 6 is going to have wall running.
Incoming.
Classy Ham says, let me see, Classy Ham had something funny to say. Galaxy Brain Move, study game dev and join 343 to better impact the direction of the game. For sure. Where do I start?
Skewer inbound.
What do you think about Infinite going with all projectile weapons? That would be my ideal way to balance the game. I want it to be like a Battlefield. I mean, not like a Battlefield, but that's the game I think most people think of when they think of projectiles. I want all weapons to come from a source, and they have to travel a little bit. You know, and the further away you get from the player, you have to leave your shots a bit.
Enemy has the ball.
In fairness, though, Halo could have been much worse than it is, and the product is technically acceptable. Yeah, Halo Infinite, like, all hyperbole aside, it is a multiplayer shooter in which you engage other players online. It's not like this dysfunctional piece of software, you know? It's just a buggy but competent multiplayer shooter.
Enemy has the ball. Ball dropped. Enemy has the ball. Ball dropped.
I think wall running would have been cool in Halo 5, actually, but only because it's already barely a Halo game. Wall running probably would have been a little bit too far for even Halo 5, which already was a bit too... pushed the boat a little bit too far, in my opinion, but... What do you think Halo Infinite would have looked like if Halo 5 was successful? Well, it probably would have looked a hell of a lot different. We probably would have gotten more... There's this meme that I see a lot, that I saw a lot, I should say, past tense, which was really funny, which was like a progression of Spartan armors, and it was like Halo 1, and it was very simple. Then it was like Halo 2, a little bit more detail. Halo 3, just a pinch more detail. Halo Reach, basically the same, but with a lot of attachments on things. Halo 4, it was like this greebled up, like you could barely tell that was a human. Halo 5, and it was just like this like mess. It looked like a thing of squiggles and details and stuff. And then it was like Halo 6, and it was just a Bayformer transformer where you couldn't tell what you were looking at. Oh man. Yeah, that's it for me, though, for now, guys. I am very tired and very hungry, and I'm sure my little munchkin, my little pumpkin dog, I see him right there. He's napping on his bed. I'm sure he's also hungry, too, so I'm going to go make him some food. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream, though. Oof. This was a lot of fun, everybody. Alrighty. Kudos. We will see you guys on the next... video, which should be the evolution of the Marine. We didn't talk about that. Yeah, I'm working on the evolution of the Marines. So, okay, guys. I shall see you all later, all right? This was good fun, good conversation.